Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Monday. Hope everybody had a fun and safe weekend. And we are back to start another week of the Notre Dame offseason. And Brian, there's no better way to kick this off than covering two commitments that happened earlier today. And that's what we have focused on today, folks, covering the commitment of wide receiver Jackson Coleman and tight end Titus Hawk. And we're going to wrap up everything with a daily mailbag focused on recruiting. You guys know how we cover breakdowns. We're talking backstory. We're going to break down their class impact. Obviously, we have to dive into the film, and then we're going to talk about what's next. This is a heck of a way to start off the week, man.
It is. You know, we put our weekly schedule out last night, which is something I'm trying to do more of on the premium board. And I was like, okay, we may have to alter this if there's some news breaking, because we knew, obviously, Trev, I let you know last night that we were expecting these commitments both to happen today. And fortunately, we appreciate Jackson Coleman and Titus Hawk for working with our schedule. Not directly, because we didn't ask him to, but working with our schedule to make sure we could get these done before our show started, so we can dive into both of them, Trev, because these are two very important pickups. Jackson Coleman, the wide receiver from Colorado, and Titus Hawk, the tight end from Oklahoma, have both committed to Notre Dame. And the class is going. The offense is starting to get, kind of get rolling. This has been predominantly the defense has dominated recruiting so far. You had that good week that J1 Sider had. Other than that, it was a couple of offensive linemen whose dads played at Notre Dame. Now, both talented players, but it's kind of like, I don't give you a whole lot of credit for great recruiting win when you sign an offensive lineman whose dad played at Notre Dame. You know what I mean? And for James Halter, his dad played offensive line at Notre Dame. So doesn't mean they're not great pickups, but it's not exactly like, wow, this staff is unbelievable kind of thing. Had that great week for J1 Sider. We got the two running backs. And after that, like, it was all defense. You got Aiden O'Neal last week. You already had Amari Irvin in the class. You had Xavier Hassan in the class, Ace Austin. Then they went out and got Zayden Gamble. They got John Gay the third. Heck, even Marty Biaggi has got on the board with the number one ranked snapper in the country in Sean Kraft. Like, all right, offense, here we go. Well, now, Trev, 3 in a row. Got Champ Mons on Friday, and now today you get Jackson Coleman and Titus Hawk. So offensive staff was like, all right, we've been playing around long enough. It's time for us to get rocking and rolling.
And that's absolutely what they've done. They're starting to rock and roll. They're really heating up on the recruiting trail. So let's talk about this, man. Let's talk about Jackson Coleman first. He was the first one that committed this morning. He's a wide receiver from Valor Christian High School from Highland Ranch, Colorado. He's 6'4", 195 pounds. He committed this morning to be the 13th overall commitment in the 2027 class. Brian, this is a big one.
Yeah, this is a, I mean, look, you needed to get on the board at receiver, right? And you needed to get a guy that had some impact ability, and that's certainly what they did, Trev. And when you look at this recruitment, it's been kind of this is a new name on the board. I mean, this is literally, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me a lot of the Bubba Frazier recruitment from last year. And I'm actually going to look up Bubba's, like, when Bubba got offered. But you remember, he didn't get offered till like later in the spring. And then, like, pretty quickly after Bubba got the offer, he then committed to Notre Dame, and it all happened pretty quickly. So I'm actually going to go look at that, Trev, so Bubba got offered. Let's find that when Bubba got offered to see if I can find it on Twitter. But, like, he got offered, I think, early May, visited like right after that. Maybe it was like late March, visited right after that, and then committed really quick after that, which made for an interesting. Yeah, he got offered he got offered in February. So he got offered in February 21st, so later in the process. And then by the first week of May, Bubba had committed to Notre Dame. And so he gets offered, gets on campus pretty quickly, and then commits. And this is a similar situation, but even more sped up, where, when you kind of dive into the backstory, Trev, they didn't offer him until April. So he was a bit of a late bloomer. He only had 18 catches as a sophomore at Valor Christian. The sophomore film's not bad, but a kid from Colorado that only has 18 catches as a sophomore isn't going to exactly light the world on fire. So he goes out as a junior and really has a breakout season, Trev. He catches 45 passes this past season, 975 yards, 21.7 yards per catch, 9 touchdowns. Had over 100 yards in 2 of their 3 playoff games this year. And of course, there's a connection there. The head coach at Valor Christian is Mike Sanford, who used to coach at Notre Dame. And one thing about Mike Sanford is he's always had nothing but good things to say about Notre Dame ever since he left Notre Dame. He's not one of those coaches that like leaves and takes shots and things like that. And I've always appreciated that about him. But he's now the head coach at Valor Christian. And so Notre Dame gets out to see him in mid-April. Carter Allman, for example, went out on April 15th, and the staff kind of got in on him. And immediately actually had somebody at Notre Dame like, hey, what do you think of this kid? You know, because like, I think maybe trying to get some buzz on him. And I was like, yeah, I had just watched him that day. And I was like, yeah, you know, because the highlights are really impressive and the game film is impressive as well. But you start looking at him and you're like, where'd he come from? And then you're like, okay, Miami had just offered him. Michigan had just offered him. Oregon had offered him in January. So Oregon got on him real quick after his junior season. And Oregon was actually the team that was considered, they were on the verge of getting his commitment. Had Notre Dame not jumped on the board here, I think he would have ended up in Oregon. So the fact that Oregon, Notre Dame, Miami, and Michigan were making a run at this kid, I think tells you this wasn't a schools kind of missing out on top targets. When you look at Notre Dame, all their top targets except for one are still on the board. Like this was like, hey, this kid popped up. We got on him late, but once they identified him as a kid that they really like, they went hard after him and made a push to get him in the class. And so they offered him they visited him on April 15th at the school. They offered him on April 16th. He visits a week and a half later for the Blue Gold game. And then obviously, a little over a week after that, he's in the class. This is about as fast as a recruitment as you're going to see. There's no pressure for Notre Dame to get him. I think what this came down to, Trev, is when you look at it, is, you know, Jackson is a very good student. And he had 2 official visits set up, one to Oregon, one to Northwestern. He's got offers from, you know, Vanderbilt, Duke, Northwestern, and Stanford too. And I was told by a source that he really likes Stanford, but he also wants to go somewhere that's got a strong football program. And obviously at the present moment, Stanford doesn't have a real strong football program. So obviously Oregon gave him some of that. And I think a big reason why Notre Dame was able to do such quick work is because Notre Dame truly offered Jackson the best of both worlds. Where it's like, look, I want to go play at a big-time football program where they're going to throw the ball and I'm going to be used and be developed, but I also want to go somewhere where I'm going to get a first-class education. This is no shot at the Oregon education. I don't know a lot about it. I'm sure it's a quality education, but, I mean, we can be honest and say, like, Notre Dame's on a little bit of a different level in that regard. And I think that's what allowed Notre Dame to really make quick work of this, despite the fact this is a kid that Oregon was pushing for, and from what I was told from sources, not Notre Dame sources, but other sources, they had a pretty substantial NIL offer on the table for him too. Like, this is a kid they wanted. And then, as I mentioned, Miami got involved in March and Michigan offered a week before Notre Dame did. But it was the Notre Dame offer that really caught this young man's attention. And then they just completely blew him away on the official visit, like that, or not the official visit, but the Blue Gold game visit. And that's really what kind of separated it. I mean, but you could tell there was an immediate attraction to Notre Dame because, like, within 2 days of him being offered, he's got an unofficial visit set up. Anyone that is flying at this time of the year knows it's not easy or cheap to just that quickly schedule a visit. Got out here real fast, and like I said, Notre Dame blew him away. And we watched the Blue Gold game, and we're nitpicking this and nitpicking that. But if you're a wide receiver, how many deep balls did we watch Notre Dame throw during the Blue Gold game? So obviously he's going to see that and like that, and he was impressed. And then, of course, the whole pitch. And the thing, too, is even though they got on him late, they were very clear to say, hey, you are a guy we want. There was no, well, hold off until we hear from this kid or that kid. It was, hey, we got limited spots, and if you want one, you can have one. And I think that mattered to Jackson, too, because when you're a kid like him and you're like, well, this school's getting on me a lot later than everybody else, you're going to kind of wonder, well, why? You know, did you miss out on some top guys? You know, am I a plan B option? And from what I'm told, Mike Brown, Mike Denbrock, Marcus Freeman all made sure that he understood, nope, you're a guy that we want. And a lot of our top targets are still on the board. So if you want to be here, you can be here. And he jumped on board. So there's not a lot to the backstory that's like, ooh, fascinating. It's like, dude, this happened quick. Visited on the 15th, offered on the 16th. He visits a week and a half later. Week after that, he's in the class. That's about as efficient of a recruitment as you're going to get. I mean,
sure
it really is. It really is. It's a big pickup.
Sure is, man. If only every single recruit backstory would kind of be that smooth sailing. I'm with you, but it's absolutely a big pickup. Let's talk about Jackson Coleman's impact on the 2027 recruiting class. Obviously, we talked about it. He's the 13th overall commit, 6th offensive guy, first wide receiver. But one thing that I really like about this, and I'm not somebody that believes that your entire receiving core should be made up of 6'3", 6'4" guys. That you need a diverse skill set. But what Jackson Coleman does for this class is he gives them a body type from the recruiting trail that, let's be honest, they've had to go out and get out of the transfer portal the last 2 seasons with Malachi Fields in 25 and now Quincy Porter in 2026. So I like the fact that they're going out and they're able to land this big body, deep threat guy. It adds it to the class.
Well, it's interesting, Trevor, is, we've done a lot of draft talk lately, and you said multiple times how unimportant 6'2" plus receivers are at the next level. Like unimportant might not be the right word, but there's just not the same impact from those type of players. Which, I mean, the stats back up the point that you're making. I have no pushback on that. Not the same in college football.
Nope.
In college football, these players are still very coveted and very impactful. And Notre Dame doesn't have a lot of it on their roster. I mean, there's 6'4" Quincy Porter. Then after that, it's like 6'2" Micah Gilbert, 6'2" Cam Williams, 6'2" Devin Fitzgerald. Well, when this class shows up, only one of those guys won't be draft eligible or a senior when this class shows up. So looking forward, you wanted to get another big-bodied player into the class. Now, I don't think he's a pure boundary, meaning he's not stuck in the boundary, but he can definitely play the boundary. And so I want to be clear on that. I like him for the boundary. I think he really fits well for the boundary. But some guys are like, they can only play boundary. That's what I'm saying is he's not just a boundary-only guy, but he's a boundary target. He gives you another big, tall body. He's going to be the second tallest receiver on the roster when he shows up. And then when Quincy Porter leaves, he'll then be the tallest receiver on the roster. And he also gives you some vertical speed. So he's not just like a big-bodied, slow kid. He gives you some juice. And the other thing, too, about him, Trevor, which is I found fascinating, is Oregon had talked to him about possibly maybe growing into a tight end depending on how his body fills out. And I think that speaks a little bit to his frame. But he's an interesting prospect for sure and gives them something that they needed. So when you talk about class impact, we'll talk about how he fits in the receiver class as a whole. But I like that we're starting with sort of like the skill set, the body type is really something that they don't have a lot of in the younger classes and need more of on the roster. And I think that's a reason why they were very attracted to Jackson Coleman. And then the second reason why is the speed, and we'll show you that on film. It's interesting. So there's 3 different data points. One is the 100-meter dash time. Last year, he ran a 10.67 and a couple 10.7s, which translates to like a mid to high 4.4. The 10.7 is getting closer to like a 4.5, which is moving for a 6'4" kid. Well, then I guess he ran like a 4.67 at a winter combine or something like that. And then there's the film. 2 of the things show really good speed. One of them doesn't. And so it'll be interesting to kind of see how that goes. But at the end of the day, the film shows you a kid that can bring speed to the table and down the field ability. And of course, that's always something that Notre Dame is looking more and more for when you talk about what they want a receiver. You look at last year's class, what was a big part of what they looked for? They want speed. That's why they went and got Braden Robinson. That's why they went and got Bubba Frazier. That's why they went and got Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham out of the portals. They want guys who can stretch the field, that can work down the field and not just be possession guys. And Jackson Coleman certainly brings you that ability to be more than just a guy that's working the middle of the field and the stops and the comebacks and things like that. He also brings you big playability. And so I think those 2 things fit it. From a number standpoint, Trevor, I've said this before, I'll say it again. There's a world in which Notre Dame only brings in 2 receivers in this class by choice. And I think now we get into the point of the number is going to be determined by who goes next. And, we'll talk more about that later, but this 2 is the minimum because number 1, if you think about it, they got 15 scholarship receivers on the current roster and only one of them is out of eligibility after the 2026 season. That's Jordan Faison. Now, let's just assume, let's say Jaden Greathouse goes out and has a big year, and he's gone after the season too. You still have 13 guys with eligibility coming back. Even if you dropped 4 of them for portal, or you tell them to go to the portal, they choose to go to the portal, whatever the reason may be, you're still at 9, and all of those players would have eligibility after 2027. So we've talked about this before, Trev. It's a very young depth chart. Matter of fact, I'm actually going to bring up the article we did the other day at irishbreakdown.com. It's also on the message board, but we did a post-spring depth chart. So let me pull that up real quick, just to give you a sense of why Notre Dame is thinking lower on numbers this year, because it's not just about winning a recruiting war. It's also about saying, hey, we're going to go out and we've got to make sure that we're building the team the right way. And that's certainly a big part of it. But when you look at this article, so I'll pull this up here real quick, Trev. Actually, this will actually be helpful information. So let's pull this up here real quick. This is how the Notre Dame receivers line up. So we talk about XZW. I think for one, we look at Jackson Coleman as a W that can also play Z and X, but primarily as a W. But then you look at the depth chart. So you look at the X position. 1 player beyond sophomore eligibility, 2 with freshman eligibility. You look at the Z position, that's the slot. None of them are out of eligibility. 5 of the 6 have freshman or sophomore eligibility. Half have freshman eligibility. Now, several of these guys can play other positions. That's where Caden Finley is now, because that's where he was in the spring, but he could play boundary, he could play field, he could play all over. And then you go to the boundary position. This is where you're, again, not one guy who's a senior and he's a walk-on. The 5 scholarship players in the boundary are sophomore or freshman eligibility. So when you want to understand why they're talking about lower numbers, that's why. Because not only do you have a lot of players, 15 scholarship players, and who I don't have on this list, actually, I have Matt Jeffrey on the list. So obviously Matt Jeffrey's more of a lacrosse player, but like he played for them last year. He helped them in like meaningful snaps, played for them last year. So I think when you look at it, Trevor, they're looking more for impact and specific traits than they are numbers. And that's why Jackson Coleman was important, because it's not that he meets a numbers need. There was no doubt they were going to meet their numbers need. The question was, would they add the talent that they're looking for? And he brings something to the table that you're definitely needing, which is that bigger body. And obviously, Notre Dame's going to want Julius Jones Jr. We'll break that down later. But like, he brings everything else to the table except that one thing, which is the size. And you got that with Jackson Coleman.
Yeah, you sure do, man. He's an impressive kid to dive into his film, but I'm with you. With the big recruiting class that you brought in 2026, it allows you to kind of play that big game hunting more so fit than more like casting a wide net to see who you can bring in. And that's one thing that I appreciate about the efforts of Mike Brown and Mike Denbrock.
Yeah, I mean, because like, again, I know as fans, it's easy for us to get caught up into like, I want this to win recruiting battles, and let's keep adding this guy and let's keep adding that guy. But they're not really worried about that. They're trying to build a roster. And there does get to a point where like, we only have so many resources that we can use. Looking at it from the coach's standpoint, hey, you got to say this to yourself. We only have so many resources we can use. We only have so much money. We only have so many spots. We only have so many reps to give. Yeah, it'd be great to go out and get 4 receivers. Hey, bring me this guy, this guy, this guy, this. Hey, I'd take them, all of them. That sounds great. And you can do that on NCAA. You're a CFB 2026. You can bring in however many, you want. And when you cut them, you're just cutting someone that's a fake computer program, right? It's not like what's it called, Free City, right? What was it called? Or The Free Guy? What was it called with Ryan Roberts, right? Like Ryan Reynolds, yeah. So I mean, it's isn't that. These are you're building a roster, and you've got to say, yeah, we've already maxed out on numbers at receiver. And if we're only guaranteed to lose 1, we might lose 2. Yeah, we may lose some portal guys, and if that happens, that's fine. But you can always go to the portal. If you have a mass exodus exodus next year, you can just go to the portal, replace some of those guys, and then bring in a bunch of 2028 guys. So that's why the numbers are low. But again, he gives you half of that, but it's not that, it's the specifics. And then when you look at how it impacts the class overall, Trev, this is not one of those commitments that's going to necessarily blow away the recruiting rankings. He's a 3-star kid. He's ranked in the 100s at wide receiver in the class. And I'll just tell you guys something that I know for a fact. There are a couple really much higher ranked receivers that like Notre Dame a lot. And they basically are going to drop those guys because of this. And I'm not talking about Julius Jones Jr., but they're going to drop those guys because they got Jackson Coleman. That's how much they like Jackson Coleman. So this may not be a pickup that gets people fired up and it's sexy. And, oh, gee, Mike Brown got the number 122 receiver in the country. Whoop-de-freaking-do. Yeah, whoop-de-freaking-do, because they beat out Oregon for him, who wanted him badly. What did we say preseason, Trev? Who are the top 3 teams we said in college football have the most talented rosters in college football? Notre Dame, Texas, and Oregon. Well, 2 of those 3 teams wanted this kid bad. Miami was a team that we had, 5th or 6th in most talented rosters? They were making a run at this kid. They're not in trouble when it comes to numbers at receiver. It's just that for whatever reason, his name got out late. And, and that's why you're seeing make him a run at it. So, I can guarantee you guys this. There are not 100 receivers in the country better than Jackson Vaughn. This is definitely a win for Mike Brown. This is definitely a win for Mike Denbrock in the offense, and definitely a good addition to this class. I don't think this is in response to Champ Mons committing. I think this would have happened no matter what, but I don't think it hurt that Champ Mons committed either. You know what I mean? But that's the other thing too, though, is in this class and in last year's class, 26 and 27, you've now landed 3 quarterbacks that like to throw the ball down the field. You've got to get receivers that fit that skill set. And that's the final piece of this puzzle for Jackson Coleman is you have a receiver that gives you a weapon for whoever emerges from that pack of quarterbacks, whoever it is going to want to throw the ball down the field. And as long as Mike Denbrock's the offensive coordinator in Notre Dame, they're going to throw the ball down the football field. And so I think this is a big win for Notre Dame, and it's a big win for Mike Brown. And it's typical of Mike Brown, some of his recruitments, right? Like he's landed some players the last couple of years that aren't sexy pickups. Like if Devin Fitzgerald's name was Devin Fitzsimmons and his dad was a local orthodontist, would anybody be fired up about Devin Fitzgerald when he signed last year? If just sort of the casuals, no, of course not. But boy, aren't you sure glad that they got him now? There weren't a lot of people that were as fired up as I was that Notre Dame got Bubba Frazier last year, Trev. I mean, there's people that liked him, but there weren't people. Sure glad you got him now. It's about finding the players that have the impact talent, not the guys that Rivals or 247 or whoever think are good. Sometimes they get it right. Sometimes they get it wrong. And I put a post out the other day on the board, where people were somebody was talking about how, you've got to go out and get the highly ranked guys. And I said, well, some of those guys that were drafted were highly ranked, but not all of them. Here's a little data for you. So of the first 10 receivers that were drafted, this year, they were all first, second, or third round picks. There were 6 of them that ranked number 49 or lower at their position group. The number 8 overall pick, Jordan Tyson, was the number 798 player in the country and the number 119 player in the country. Casey Concepcion, first-round draft pick, number 90 receiver in the country. Omar Cooper, first-round draft pick, was the number 59 overall receiver in the country. DeJon Stribling, who went to Oklahoma State, then transferred to Ole Miss, was the number 1 player taken in the second round, was the number 201 overall receiver in the country. Not player, receiver. Next receiver taken, early second round, Denzel Boston, number 134 wide receiver in the country. And then, of course, Malachi Fields was ranked as the number 891 overall player in the country and was the number 49 athlete in the country coming out of high school. So this is why I say rankings don't matter. It's about your talent. And so that's why I think this is a win for Mike Brown, because it's a player they identified as someone that they like, that has the talent that they think can impact the roster. and they went out and got him, and they weren't worried about recruiting rankings. They weren't worried about what the fan base might think. They weren't worried about what Brian Driscoll might think or what Trevor Trowbridge might think. They said, that kid helps us. He has what we're looking for, and he fits what we're looking for from a culture standpoint. Let's go get him. And they got him. And that's conviction. That's conviction right there, is to get on a kid that late and say, sorry, guys, we've been recruiting for months. We're taking this kid. Because it's not about when you get on him. It's about, do they have the traits you're looking for? And he certainly fits that.
Without a doubt. I'm with you, man. I'm ready to dive into this kid's film because it's a very, very fun watch.
It certainly is, Trev. So when we pull this up, the first thing you guys are going to notice are two things. Number one, he's tall and long. It's one thing to be tall. It's another thing to be long. Why this matters is because this gives you a great catch radius. A catch radius is essentially the space around you that you can obviously go catch the football. And the taller you are and the longer your arms are, the bigger the zone is going to be for you to catch the football. And the first thing you're going to notice when you watch Jackson Coleman's film, Trevor, is a young man that's long and a young man that's very tall. And you can see that here. He's also a hands catcher, which you saw. The second thing you're going to see about him is he can move. And he's got a lot of speed that he brings to the table and makes a lot of plays down the field. You see why he averaged over 20 yards a catch last season, because a lot of what he does for Valor Christian is running vertical routes. But here's something I like too, Trevor. This is something that really meant something to me. He's got a lot of route refinement that is needed, as all high school players do. But he's clearly been taught the position. And this is a perfect example. So where's the corner lined up? He's playing inside leverage. Okay, why is he playing inside leverage? Because he's trying to protect the inside. He wants to force you outside and force you to the sideline. That's a far hash high school throw. If you're going to run outside, it's going to be a much harder route for it to take. So what do I teach receivers? What do good coaches teach receivers? Attack the leverage, right? Go where he doesn't want you to go, because if you do, he's going to overreact. So on this particular play, you're going to see this. You're going to see Jackson goes, and he goes after the guy. And so you see that. So look where the shoot. I hate it when it does that. Sometimes technology is not my friend, Trevor. Now we're going to have to watch another stupid Jeep commercial. But what he does is he attacks the leverage, right? He attacks the guy's inside leverage, and he gets the guy to freeze. And when he freezes, now you're cooked, because they're going to overreact. When you come to the area that I want you to be on, then I'm going to overreact a little bit to that, and I'm going to beat you deep. So we'll get to that clip here in a little bit. But like I said, the first thing you're going to see, size and speed, attacks down the field, and you're also going to see great ball skills from Jackson Coleman as well. So we'll get to that film here in a little bit, but we'll get to this part. But here's another one, right? Oh, my goodness. What is going on with this stupid film today? This is really ticking me off. Give me a second. I have no idea why it's doing this, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it this way and find out what's going on. So sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody, today, but this is this is not my friend. It's not my friend today. Normally, let me see if it works this time, so I make sure it's going before we go to it. So all right, now we're good to go. So let's get to his film. So you see this next play. We saw this one. So watch this, right? He's working on an inside zone, so he's going to get inside. Who's he attacking now? Why would he release like this? The corner's not on him. Who's he trying to influence here, Trev? It's not the corner. He's running a dig route. He's trying to influence the safety. So what is his first move? Eat up the leverage, get inside, get vertical. And now you're stemming up on the safety to where if you just release vertical here and you make that in cut, you're number one going to get rerouted by the corner if he's coached at all. And then number two, that safety is going to have a much better angle to drive on that ball to come get you. And the angle to him is really not going to be ideal for the quarterback to throw that football. Now, it might work with a high school safety, but if you're releasing from outside the 20 and it's Tate Johnson or a Don Schuler or Joey O'Brien or Ethan Long that's going to be coming down on you, or corner or safeties at Georgia or Oregon or Texas or Ohio State, that ball's a lot more dangerous. But he understands, okay, who am I attacking? Who am I going against? Who am I worried about? And how do I get after them? So you see that he has understood. Now, there's a lot of route technique that he needs to improve upon, like this right here. Look how choppy he gets at the top. Doesn't use his hands great. But he's a junior in high school. Those things can be cleaned up. But the point is, Trevor, he has an idea of what he's doing. He's not some 16-year-old kid who just got, who's trying to get his license, and this is his first time behind the wheel, and he's just banging into stuff, and you're thinking, goodness, you're out in the middle of a parking lot with a lot of space, because otherwise you'd be in 13 wrecks, right? This is a kid that has an understanding. Yeah, he's got to get better and improve, but this is a kid that has an understanding of what he's trying to do. There he is blocking a punt. But so those are the things I like, Trev, is he's a smart football player that has a good foundation to work with. And that's something that you clearly notice a lot from him.
Yeah, without a doubt. A lot of technical refinement needed in his game, but I love all of the tools that he possesses. And he has a baseline, to your point. It's not just, well, this is a freak athletic kid. You know who he reminds me of, and I don't think it's a coincidence, the two guys that played a part in his recruitment? It's Alec Pierce, who was also a wide receiver at Cincinnati during the time that Mike Brown was at Cincinnati, and also when Mike Denbrock was at Cincinnati. They have a lot of very similar traits, similar frame. They're both. Alec Pierce ran a 4.41 at the NFL Combine. Similar track speed, similar
acceleration
frames.
right there, Trev. That's what you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. Does a great job of accelerating through contact with the defensive back, which is also huge, and that's where his speed and frame comes into play. But to your point, good job stacking the corner there. Was that looked like two man, but he got behind the corner, stacked him well. Did a really good job of finding and locating the football, attacking the football. It's a good kid.
And here's the play that we were talking about earlier with the cornerback. As I see, you'll see him attacking leverage, and then look at him. So once you attack leverage, that cornerback's going to overreact, and now he's on his heels, and then you break outside, he's toast. And then look how much more room you gave yourself to the outside for the quarterback to throw the football. And the quarterback throws it perfectly, and he tracks it outside. Very savvy guy. But the speed is what really stands out too, Trev, is this kid plays fast. He absolutely plays fast. I like him working the dig here. He's also got really good feel for the zone.
Yep.
So watch him kind of throttle up right there. You see how his speed changes? He kind of throttles into that zone, finds that opening, makes the catch with his hands, and then he can make people miss. It's funny you bring up Alec Pierce, and I definitely see exactly what you're talking about. But the comp that I made in my article was Jeff Samardzija, because he's also a really smooth athlete. And a lot like Jeff, he's a very smooth athlete, but he's faster than what Jeff was, and that's where that Alec Pierce makes a lot of sense. But like this is the thing I like. Look at this. He catches the little in cut, makes the guy miss, and once he got you beat, he's off to the races. You're not going to catch him. Now, he's going to face a lot better cornerbacks than that at Notre Dame and in college football, obviously. But those things, he's also going to get more refined, and he's going to get faster, and he's going to, get stronger and all those other type of things. But he does this a lot in high school. He was almost 1,000 yards last year on only 45 catches. I think that says a lot about him. But look at the length too, Trev. You can see how long his arms are on clips like this. You can see how they're down to his knee when he's in his, and he's not in a real low stance. Like, he doesn't have great bend in his front knee. That's why see, look at him have to reset, because he's not in a great sprinter stance. He's kind of flat-footed on that front foot. So you can see he has to kind of completely change that. A lot of receivers do that. Drives me nuts. But the point is, he's not like real low in his stance, and that's why his hands are all the way down to his knees. He's got very long arms. There's no doubt about that. And the other thing too is he does a pretty decent job of accelerating when he looks back to the ball. Like, he's actually got a pretty good feel for that as well. He's not as bad as most what high school guys are. Like this move right here, little double move. This is a route. The stop route is one you'll see on film where he needs a little bit of work there, but he's got the tools to be really quick and sharp out of routes. Really nice catch.
Yeah, without a question. His acceleration is insane. Coming in and out of breaks. Does a great job. I like that you brought it there. He has a great feel for zone. I think that's a very underrated trait. But to your point, it just goes back to him being a good football player. Mm-hmm. I mean, he has a good understanding of, like, right there. Once he clears, there was no linebacker that dropped on that play. But in a previous play where he ran a dig route, there was a linebacker that floated back, and he was able to find the hole in the zone, decelerate there. Sees that there was no linebacker dropping, accelerated through the catch.
Now, one thing that I do notice from him several times that I want to see him work on, and this is an example. Everything you said is perfectly right. He drifts a little bit much on in-breaking routes. And so what that means, drifting, is like, look at him working upfield. So he makes his cut a little bit past the 40, and he runs that dig, but he drifts all the way to the 45 when he catches the ball. There's going to be a natural drift. It's not an in route. It's more of a dig. So there's going to be that. But when you get vertical, level off here. because good DBs, that's how they jump in front of you. This kid from, I think this is Regis, I think is who they're going against here, but some kid from Denver, Colorado, even if he's a 1AA player, or a D2 or a D3 player, is not going to make that play. Leonard Moore is undercutting you right now and getting to the football. Kari Adams is going to undercut you right there and get to the football. So there's a lot to like there, but then there's that refinement of, hey, level that off. Once you bend it, then level it off. Don't keep drifting upfield. That's certainly something he'll need to continue to work on as well. But again, the foundation is strong though, right, Trev? Like, how many kids show up to college like perfectly precise, ready-made players that, maybe if the dad played in the National Football League, you might be good at that. Christian McCaffrey showed up with about as fundamentally sound as you're going to play. Well, it's because his dad was one of the most fundamentally sound wide receivers in the NFL history. You know what I mean? Like there's kids like that, but most have things to work on. We just point those things out. It's not like it's some debilitating thing. Like, I don't know if he's going to pan out because he does that. Real nice, quick set there. Trev, you see that? Look like he's got the quick feet to stop, and nice job working back to the football there. Also, when he sees the quarterback, I guess that the previous one wasn't Regis Jesuit, because that was at Regis Jesuit right there. But he's got quick feet. He's a smooth athlete. There's a lot he brings to the table. He brings to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. Very underrated with the ball in his hands. A lot of times I think you can see people who are like 6'4" and just assume that they are just a big-bodied guy that goes and makes plays in the boundary. But great hands catch like you see here. Looks to get upfield quickly.
This is one of my favorite catches or favorite clips, not because it's a hard catch, but it's the most clear. Look at him extend his hands to the football. They're not bricks. He goes out and gets it. He doesn't like flat-handed. It's not like, like you'll see guys that are like, oh, God, get like this. No, soft elbows. Attack the football. Go get it and bring it in. It's one smooth motion. And you see that here from him. He goes to the football, snatches it, and there's no like hard hands. You say, why does, we've talked before about, the sound that the ball hits the guy's hands. Well, the sound is determined by how stiff the guy is that's catching the football. If your elbows are locked and you're just kind of there and your fingers are tense, it's going to be loud when a guy like CJ Carr or Kenny Minchie or Blake Hebert or Noah Grubbs throws that football. That sucker's going to have some pop. It's going to be like a catcher's mitt. You know what I mean? The guys that are soft, it's because their hands aren't super tense and their arms aren't locked and they're not flat. The ball's not hitting it flat. Because think about it. If you throw a football as hard as you can into a big soft mattress up against the wall, it's going to sound a whole lot different than if you throw a football as hard as you can onto a brick wall, right? It's about this. It's not, the ball's no different. The speed's no different. The weight's no different. It's the same air pressure. The difference is what's absorbing the football, what's hitting the football. Is it a flat, hard surface? Boom, it's going to be loud. If it's something that's got more give, it's going to be less loud. And you see an example of that here is he does a nice job of go get the football, bring it in, tuck it, and then look for work. And that's something that you were getting ready to say that, Trev, because I wanted to point that clip out, but that's something you were pointing out is he catches the ball and immediately starts looking for work. What that means is he starts looking for, okay, where am I going next? How can I get free? How can I maximize yardage?
With little wasted movement, which is something that I appreciate. A lot of times, too, especially when you're a freak athlete like this kid is, the high school level, you start playing, I'm trying to think of a way to put this, like unlike what your body type is. He's not trying to juke people out of his shoes. He's a one cut and go guy. He understands that he accelerates really well, but to your point, makes great hands catch, turns upfield immediately, and
look at him attack downhill. It's basically like you don't want a receiver playing street ball.
Yeah.
You catch the ball and I'm going to juke. And how many times as kids when we're out there on the playground and guys make all, I'm like, dude, if we were playing real football, some D tackle would have just literally ended your career with all them stupid cuts you were making. Like he is getting vertical. He's like, there's the end zone. Fastest way to it is this way. I like this too, Trev. Look at him working back downhill. Another example of him taking his hands to the football. Don't just sit there and wait for the quarterback to get you the ball. Go find the open spot. Look at that. Look at that window. If the quarterback throws it into where he is now, right there, there's a linebacker about to undercut that route. He keeps working, gives the quarterback a zone, and goes and makes the play. Like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Another one where he's giving his quarterback time to go and work through. He has the speed where on that drag route, if you go back for a second, He has the speed on that drag route where he gets out of the quarterback's field of view and he intentionally pedals down and
this one or
doesn't.
the one before?
The one before. Right here. Gives the quarterback time to get through, clears the linebacker, catches the ball, immediately gets vertical and turns upfield. Like those are the underrated football IQ plays that I like from this kid a lot. A lot.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot he brings to the table, Trev. He's maximizing yards, and when he sees the hole, he hits it. He hits it and makes a big play here. So it's a lot of highlights on this clip, Trev. Now let's talk about while the highlights are finishing, we have a few more plays here. Let's talk about some of the things that he's going to have to improve upon. Number one, he's got to get stronger. His play strength needs a lot of work, which, again, you expect from a taller, skinnier junior in high school. He's probably 16, 17 years old. And so play strength is going to be important. He's going to be able to bully high school receivers or DBs more than he will Leonard Moore, Kari Adams, Aiden Pouncey, guys like that. So that's an understandable thing. Consistency is important too. There's times on film where it's very clear he's just kind of, for whatever reason, he's just kind of coming off the ball and not playing with a lot of burst and a lot of energy. And maybe he doesn't think he's the top target. Maybe he's unsure. I'm not sure. Just more consistency using your speed. He doesn't always use his speed the way that I think he can use his speed. That's something that I want to see him improve upon as well. And as we talked about, there's still a lot of things route running wise he can clean up. What I love as a receivers coach is he has an understanding of all of it. So when I start talking about attacking leverage and aiming points and things like that, that's going to be stuff he's familiar with. Now it's just about me refining why you need to do it this way, but I don't have to teach him the language of, hey, man, attack is leverage. Now, some players that come to Notre Dame, they're like, what do you mean? What's leverage? Like, I don't understand what you mean. And then they just kind of bang into the guy. There's a good foundation here. He's a very well-coached young man for a junior in high school. He's very well-coached. So when he gets to Notre Dame, there's a lot of that's already foundationally there with how to play the position. Now it's up to Coach Brown to go out there and make – actually, there's there's some junior film that we can watch here while we're talking, Trev. That there's some impressive catches on there too. This is junior film from 2024 season, but the foundation is just strong with him to build on. And so all the stuff that you look at and say, he's got to get better here, he's got to get better there, it's all coachable stuff. It's not like, well, hopefully he can knock a couple tenths of seconds off of his 40 time, which is unlikely. Man, it'd be nice if he could grow 2 or 3 inches, which again is unlikely. He's not very agile. He's got a very tight hips, hopefully he can improve them, but it's unlikely. All the tools that you want are there. High football IQ, tall, long arms, fast, smooth athlete, competitive, smart, coachable. All those things are there. Now it's just about refine it to where in high school you're playing football 101, and in college you're now taking advanced classes, and that's really where he's at. So you're not having to say, well, this kid came from a bad high school and we got to teach him the foundational aspects again. We're starting over from scratch with this kid. With him, like, he's coming in there with a good idea of what he's doing. And he's got a game plan. Like, you can see him on game film, Trev. He has a game plan when he goes into each play. You can see it. You can see he has an idea of, like, okay, here's what I'm going to do on this one. And those are things that I really like from Jackson's film. And that's why I say he's a much higher ranked player than me. I graded him. Actually, I went through last night and actually graded him. So he's a 4-star to me on eyes, like just eyeballs. I'm like, that's a 4-star receiver. But I graded him out last night, and he was at the very bottom of the range to be a top 150 caliber player is where he's at. And the two things that where he needs the most work, obviously, is cleaning up the route running, but then also the strength grade was his lowest grade. He's got to get a lot stronger. And because I think strength for a receiver is very important. And it's at any time, especially the modern game, there's a lot that good DBs are going to be able to do to prevent your skills from taking over if you don't have good play strength. And so those are things you have to get to. But yeah, he's a top 150 guy to me, Trev. I gave him a 4.5-star upside. I see that of a top 75 caliber player. Somebody on the board asked this question, and they said, is he our Charlie Becker? And I was like, well, I was kind of joking, like, yeah, he's going to be the 6'4" white kid that's going to be playing receiver for Notre Dame. But in all seriousness, yeah, that's the kind of player I think he could be if we want a recent example, which is young in his career. He's that great complementary vertical weapon to your older studs. But then when they're gone, he can become your dog. And I think he's got some of that ability to him, Trev. I really do. He's going to need maybe more time than, you know, other top guys needed, because he's just got to get stronger and things like that. But like, he won't need 3 years. You know, he's a guy that I could see pretty early in his career battling to get on the field and either being a great complement to a number one stud, or being the number one guy at some point in time down the road. I think he has that kind of upside. He just is obviously going to have, you know, some time to get there. And the one thing where competition matters is he doesn't play great competition. He plays against the best competition in Colorado, but it's Colorado. And having lived out in Colorado, there's good football players out there, but it's not like where I grew up in Virginia Beach and Norfolk. And it's not like when I lived in Jacksonville, Florida, and was playing high school ball there. It's a different animal. So there's always that adjustment period where, okay, guys are just bigger, stronger, and it takes me a little bit longer to adapt than maybe some guy who, played in LA, or some guy that played at 6A Florida, or some guy, you know what I mean? Like, there's that a little bit of adjustment, but the skills are the skills. You're not faster because you play against good competition than you are against bad competition. You may not need to turn on the full speed as much when you're, I can run, 90% and outrun these Denver, Colorado DBs, but against these Texas DBs, I got to go 100%. But if you're a 4.5, you're a 4.5. You don't magically get faster because you're playing against better competition. And so the skills are there. There's no doubt about that, Trev. But that's where I graded him. Top. Somebody in the chat asked, so that's why I brought it up. He's a top 150 caliber player right now. He's on the bottom end of that for the reasons that I talked about. But it would not surprise me if we saw him as a senior show some of those jumps and jump into the top 100. He's got he's not close to it points wise, but his game is close to it, where one good offseason can be important. Like, we were asked the other day about, would you guys have reclassified? And I was like, no, I wouldn't have reclassified because I wasn't ready to. I put on 15 pounds of just my body matured from my junior to senior year. I didn't work out any harder. I was never a big guy in the weight room. I always wanted to just go throw. Like, if you do anything different in your career, I would have spent more time understanding the importance of being in the weight room when I was younger, so just opposed to always working out and agilities. And I wanted to be out there doing quarterback things, like throwing the football and working on my footwork and things like that. So I didn't know any better. So if he's a guy that could make a similar type of jump in that regard, where he could, become that guy. And yes, Colorado did go after him, but he wasn't interested. So that's where I'm at with him when it comes to my my upside ranking. Let's just talk a little bit about what's next, Trevor. Now that we've broken down the film, we're just going to talk about receiver what's next now, and we'll talk about more big picture recruiting what's next when we get to our next commitment. But really, what's next is you're wanting at least one more receiver in this class. I could see a world in which they take two more, but right now I think the plan is to take one more. And I think what you're going to see now is a lot of the focus is going to be on Julius Jones Jr. And if you're a member of the board at Irish Breakdown and you're wondering, like, hey, what do you think about this? All these recruiting sites are now saying that Notre Dame's in a good place here. If you're a member of the message board, you've known that for months. I've always felt like, yes, Julius Jones Jr. loves Oregon, loves Notre Dame. I always felt like he's leaning to Oregon and they're the team to beat. I never bought that because of the sources that we had. And so Notre Dame is I think that's the guy they're zeroing in on and saying that's the number one target. We got to go get that guy, because when you're going to bring in two, and he's been the number one receiver on your board for months. And even when Monson Sales was somewhat on the board, Julius Jones Jr., from the moment they dove into this class, was the top guy. And it's not just because of it's not even at all because of who his dad. It's because he's a game changer. He's an absolute game changer. And so that's their number one target on the board right now. There's other guys on the board that are really good players. Cade Cooper, someone that I absolutely hope that Notre Dame continues to go after now. But at the end of the day, for this staff to meet its needs, two guys, impact players, Julius Jones Jr. is the most important guy. And Trev, we've been talking about this for months. When we did our Who Are the Muskets in the class, he was the one receiver we said, get one of this other group, but you got to get him. And so I think that's where you're going to see Notre Dame put a lot of their efforts into trying to close that one out. And Mike Brown's done a great job there. Mike Denbrock's been very involved in this recruitment. Marcus Freeman's very involved. They've been all hands on deck when it comes to Julius Jones Jr. And now it's about sealing the deal. And just kind of thinking about it, if you're able to beat Oregon for 2 receivers they really wanted, I think that's a big win for Notre Dame. Not only are you getting talented players, but that's another program that's contending for a national championship with you. And that's how recruiting works, is sometimes it's a win for you and it also takes away from the other guy. And that's what Jackson Coleman is when comparing him to Oregon. And Julius Jones would certainly be that type of player.
100%, especially for what Oregon has been doing on the recruiting trail at wide receiver over the last couple of years as well. Going up against, it's the equivalent of beating out a Georgia and Alabama for a defensive line recruit. Something that we saw Notre Dame do last class. So I'm with you. A lot of importance there, that's for sure. Brian, here's the good news, man. Jackson Coleman is not the only recruit commitment that we get to cover today. Up next year on the Irish Breakdown podcast, we brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We also get to talk about tight end Titus Hawk, who also committed to Notre Dame this morning before the show started. And this is another big commitment. We're talking, I mean that literally and figuratively. I mean, he's a 6'7", 210-pound tight end from Choctaw, Oklahoma, which, by the way, Titus Hawk is an awesome name for a tight end. I just got to put that out there.
Yes.
Because that name is awesome.
He is a first-team, all-name team guy. You know, we talk about this sometimes, Trev. We're like, sometimes, like, you know, if your name is going to tell us if you're going to be a guy. You know, as I said, when's the last time a first-rounder was taken with the name Bob Smith or William Smith? Or, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of those people in the country, but, you know, it doesn't really affect it. But it's just kind of like one of those things like, you know.
Yeah, man, if your name
– he's got the name.
If your name is Titus Hawk, you can't go manage a hedge fund. You have to be an athlete.
No, you got, well, you can, but it's after your football career is
after
over.
your days.
When after you've played 10 years in the NFL and you've got your Notre Dame degree and all that. Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. Once your athletic career is over, then you can go do that, obviously. So this is an interesting one, Trev. This is a complete opposite of what we saw last recruitment with Jackson Coleman, where, you know, you offered him on the 15th, you saw him on the 15th, offered him on 16th. He visited a week and a half later, and a week and a half after that, he's in the class. Think about it. The first time Notre Dame visited Jackson Coleman in person was April 15th. We are now 19 days after that. We're 18 days after he got offered a scholarship from Notre Dame, and he's in the class. Titus Hawk, a little bit different. They've been on Titus Hawk for a long time. And, you know, so this recruitment was a little bit different, Trev. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how it goes. It just matters that at the end of the day, you get her done. And Notre Dame got it done with Titus Hawk.
Yeah, they absolutely did, man. And I'm glad you brought that up. He's a player that's been on the board for quite some time. Very excited to see what he does when he comes to South Bend. But it means a lot. First tight end in the class. But you guys know what we're going to do. We're going to talk backstory, class impact, all that fun stuff, man.
So kick the backstory off, Trev. He was offered almost a year ago today. I just looked up at his Twitter page. He announced it. He announced his offer on April or May 13th of 2025. And he tagged Harris Biven in that one. And Harris Biven has played a big role in this recruitment. He's done a great job of staying on the young man. And there's been a lot of times, Trevor, since then that we haven't talked a lot about Titus Hawk on the show because I just didn't feel like they were going to get him. You know, he had visited, but there wasn't a lot out there that made us think that like they were in pole position. But we always knew they were in the top group. He made his first visit to campus in June. He worked out at the Irish Invasion. So we've all seen Titus Hawk in person. We got a chance to see him last summer, and he's every bit of 6'7". And like he is a big kid and tall. And we could see the frame then too, even though he's skinny, you could see the frame back then. And he was one of a long list. They had a lot of talented tight ends on campus last summer. And there were guys that were highly ranked that Notre Dame had on campus last year that you look at and say, well, you know, yeah, they liked that. That guy's ranked a lot higher. Why didn't they go after that guy? I couldn't tell you, but what I can tell you is last year during the Irish Invasion, they not only had Titus Hawk on campus, but they had Jack Brown on campus, who's now a Missouri commit. He's a top 150 player. He's number 139 overall on On3's rankings. Everyone has him in the top 175. Nobody has Titus Hawk in the top 75. They also had Seneca Driver on campus back then. He's the number 15 player in the country by rivals. He's ranked in the top 75 by everybody else. And I'm just going to tell you right now, this isn't my opinion. This is a fact. This is what I was told by Notre Dame, some Notre Dame sources after Irish invasion. And I could show the text. I won't, but I could show you a text message where after invasion, I'm talking with somebody and they're like, and I'm bringing up these highly ranked guys. And the guy, every time I talk to this guy, don't sleep on Titus Hawk. Don't sleep on Titus Hawk. Don't sleep on Titus Hawk. I'm like, okay, I got it. I won't sleep on Titus Hawk, but didn't know where they're going to be. So they got him on campus then. He then comes back for another visit for the Navy game. And again, they're in his top group, but I just wasn't sure, like, where are they? And he plays baseball. That's going to be a big factor. And it wasn't really until the last month that you started to see Notre Dame rise with him. And here's a question that I'm sure some of you have. Is taking him a reaction to missing Jackson Dollar? No, it isn't. And here's why I say that. Because he's being recruited as a Y. Jackson Dollar is being recruited as more of an H. Because Notre Dame has like sort of like the two type of tight ends and the different type of roles. He's being recruited to do a lot of the things that Eli Raridan did, things that Cooper Flanagan does, line up attached, block on the edge, run those type of vertical seam routes, things like that. He's not going to be used in a way that like I'm trying to think of like some other teams, like how Georgia uses their tight ends, right? Like he's more of a traditional tight end in the modern age. And so they were recruited for two different positions. And the staff has liked them for a long time, but it was just like, okay, they're always in his top 3 or 4, but are they going to ever be able to get to number 1? And over the last month, they were able to really kind of push with him and get this done. And I know one particular coach that was really after him and has been for a long time is Harris Biven. And he, like I said, he was mentioned on there when it came up to who offered him. So you got to give a lot of credit here on this one to Harris Biven for being, I would argue, the primary recruiter in this one for Titus Hawk. So this is a really big commitment for Notre Dame, really big commitment, and a guy that they put a lot in. Where again, it's funny how this works, Trev. Like Jackson Coleman, we literally the entire recruiting process was less than a month before they were able to offer him and get him in the class. With Titus Hawk, it was almost a year. You offer on May 13th, and then the following May 14th, he finally announces his commitment. And he's not a kid who's been committed for long. He committed a couple days ago. I think when did I tell you, Trevor? Was it Saturday that I texted you that okay. And that was around when he made his decision. So they were able to, hey, you put in the work, you get it done. That's really the big thing, and they were able to get this one done.
It's the important part at the end of the day, man, making sure you close. Absolutely. And it's funny that you bring that up, man. Every kid is different. Sometimes it takes a month, sometimes it takes a year, but at the end of the day, as long as they commit to Notre Dame, I'm a happy camper. Let's talk about the class impact and the impact Titus Hawk is going to have on the 2027 recruiting class. He's the 14th overall commitment in the 2027 class, first tight end on the board, 7th offensive commit. But Brian, there's something that he brings to this class. And when you look at the roster overall, you mentioned something of, he gives you that aspect of the why that Eli Raridan brought to the table. And you have a little bit of that, but I'm a big fan of complementary recruiting, making sure that they fill a need on the team. It's not just you go out and you're chasing stars or you're chasing the big names. And one thing that Titus Hawk brings to the table is that big-bodied frame. You can line them up attached, similar to that James Flanagan, Cooper Flanagan type of build, the Ian Premer type of player. But then you also have your Preston Frizzell's in the class, who are more of that H type of tight end. You have your Jack Larsons. You have, your Ty Washingtons. And so I like what Titus Hawk does as far as filling a need in Notre Dame's tight end room, because I think they need more players like that.
They do. And it's about complementary skill sets. And last year you got two guys that are neither traditional wise. The thing about Ian Premer is he can do anything. I mean, he can line up and attached if you needed him to. He can line up and be a boundary guy if you needed him to. He can line up in the slot and do a little bit of everything. But the more you can move Ian Premer, the better. And that means the more you have maybe a second tight end that can line up and be the blocker. So out of 12 personnel, a lot of times one of the two tight ends is going to stay in and block. You know, like, you don't want that to be Ian Premer, right? You want that to be somebody else, but you also want to have the ability to, out of 12 personnel, to say, we're going to throw to both of these guys and that they can be impactful players. And that's what he brings to the table. And what you can also do with a guy like Titus Hawk and Ian Premer, or Titus Hawk and Preston Frizzell, it's similar to what we talk about with James Flanagan, which is you can run 12 personnel, but those guys are athletic enough to where you're basically running all your pass plays. You run out of 11 personnel. You can run slot fades with those guys, but you have to still have that presence with your Y to be a passing threat and a blocking threat. And Titus Hawk can do both of those things. You know, he can be a legit passing weapon, as we'll show when we get down to the film, but he also brings a blocking presence. And I'll be honest with you, Trevor, I was not expecting that. The first time that I saw Titus Hawk was actually at Irish Invasion. And we said then, like, this guy's got a great name. But so you watch him, and he's tall, he's kind of skinny, he's pretty fast vertically. He's got really good vertical speed, good ball skills. And I'm thinking, this skinny kid's going to need a lot of work as a blocker. It's kind of what your first thought is when you see him. Then you pop in the film and you're like, all right, this guy's a dude in the run game. Now, would he be able to go against Boubacar Traoré today and be that dominant in the run game? No, he's 210 pounds. He needs a lot of work, but the strength, the willingness, and all that is there. The potential's there that once he adds some weight and strength, he's going to be a guy you can line up and say, block the 9 technique, down block on the 3 technique or the 4-eye technique, but then also has the athletic skill to say, but you better guard me, because if you don't guard me, I'm going to rip you up. And it's that all-around skill set he brings to the table. His game is quite advanced. His body is the thing that needs a lot of work, but his game is pretty advanced, Trev. And little note, when you talk backstory and class impact, this doesn't just impact the Notre Dame football team. This also impacts the Notre Dame baseball team. So some of the stuff I've been able to gather, he might be a draftable guy, which is kind of like where they were with Brandon Logan, where there was some thought that he might get drafted. Titus Hawk is a left-handed hitting first baseman that's considered one of the top baseball players in the state of Oklahoma. Now, unless he's a first or second round draft pick, he probably still sticks with college. And I don't see anything that projects him as a first round pick, but his intention is to also play baseball at Notre Dame. So this also is a really nice pickup for the Notre Dame baseball team. And Coach Scheffler needs to make sure that Marcus Freeman's on his Christmas card list and on his, because this current one of his, like, Brandon Logan has started multiple games at center field this year as a true freshman. Well, you only got him because of Marcus Freeman. If Brandon Logan was only playing baseball, he'd be at Vanderbilt right now, where he was committed for like a year. And same thing here. There's no chance Titus Hawk comes to play baseball at Notre Dame, in my opinion, just because of the baseball team. You're getting him here because of the football program. So that's obviously a big win for the baseball team as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm very interested to see if down the road, if football starts to come along, if he ever kind of hits that crossroads that Drake Bowen had to get to. But definitely early on, big benefit for both teams. See a lot of that on Notre Dame's football team. I mean, for a while, you had Jordan Faison and Tyler Buckner. You got Matt Jeffrey. You got Brandon Logan playing baseball. So, no, that's awesome. Definitely a cool part of the backstory. I'm with you. Any other thoughts on class impact, Brian, before we move on to film?
So somebody in the chat said it may not be a reaction on Notre Dame's part, but it could be on Hawk's new decision. And this is what I always get frustrated by sometimes, is people are always like, there's ulterior motives. And what I'm telling you is that from the beginning, Titus Hawk was not being recruited to do the same thing as Jackson Dollar. Titus Hawk committed to Notre Dame knowing that they're still going to look to take a second tight end. So, no, I don't think this decision, if you want to talk about a decision that impacted him, it's Cooper Terwilliger, not Jackson Dollar. Because Cooper Terwilliger and Titus Hawk were being recruited to play the same position. So if Cooper would have committed to Notre Dame early, then Titus would not have had a spot at Notre Dame. And vice versa. Like if Cooper was still uncommitted and Titus committed now, then he didn't have a spot. So, no, it really doesn't have anything to do with it. We're very tied into this recruitment, and I'm telling you, it did not have a decision. Notre Dame was pushing for Titus Hawk to get in the class before Jackson Dollar. And if anything, Jackson Dollar committing would have actually sped that decision up even greater, or put more pressure on Titus Hawk and others to commit. So I just want to make sure we're clear on how that process played out. His decision has been, I'm ready to make a decision. And I think Notre Dame turned up the heat because they want to get that guy. And I would argue that if they turned up the heat for a loss, it would have been the fact that Cooper Terwilliger was off the board and they were down to really only one traditional Y in the class, and they don't want to veer off of the current board. They don't want to have to go off board to get a tight end in this class. So I'm not saying a loss of another player didn't impact people's decisions, but it wasn't Jackson Dollar. If anything, it had been Cooper Terwilliger. So just make sure we're all on the same page with that. But this is him making a decision because he wanted to be here. And Notre Dame ramping up their push for him. Not that they liked him anymore, but their push for him, knowing that, hey, we had two really good Ys on the board. We wanted to get one of them. One of them's going to Penn State. We really got to ramp things up for Titus Hawk. But again, this is a guy that's been on the board for a year.
Makes sense. No, absolutely makes sense. Sounds like Titus Hawk would have been at Notre Dame regardless of if Jackson Dollar committed or not.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think the only way he does, I mean, based on how it finished, again, I don't think his close was so much about what anybody else did. It was more about just them staying on him and then Notre Dame ramping it up. So I think, again, it was more about the Cooper Terwilliger decision than anything else. Malik Howard, Jackson Dollar, those don't have anything to do with his decision because, again, Notre Dame recruits him as different positions. And like James Flanagan was recruited to play the game differently than in a different position than what Preston Frizzell was recruited to play. And what Jackson Dollar was recruited to play. Same thing here. One's a Y, one's an H. And they're recruited that way. They know that. They talk about that. Now, when they're in 11 personnel, it's all the Y. Everybody's a Y. It's who's number one, who's the Y. But 12 personnel is when you start looking at it as two different things. So just so we're all clear on kind of how this one played out.
Makes sense. Well, I'm ready to dive into Titus's film, man. I'm excited to watch this kid.
First two things you're going to see, guys, is he is a nasty kid on the field, and he is freaking tall. He is a very, very tall football player. That clip you can't see as well on this platform because it is a block, but you can see it here. Look at the speed and look at his willingness to get downfield and plant somebody. He's really difficult in space, Trevor, but he can also block really effectively at the line of scrimmage as well. You see that here, working on a double team, then gets to the second level and just buries a guy. So I like that. I think he leaves the double team maybe a skosh too soon, but he's able to get outside and get vertical. You see the speed, you see the quickness, you see the power, and his willingness to completely battle in the pass game. Here he is getting down the field, making a play down the field. He's got pretty good balance. There's a clip of that play right there on a TV copy, and you can kind of see the balance he shows when he kind of makes this play and runs through the guy and doesn't fall down. And he's got pretty good contact balance, which isn't surprising for a guy that's a baseball player.
It was plays like this that I was surprised to see on his film, him catching middle screens.
Look how quickly he accelerates.
Yes. This was one where it's like, okay, you see 6'7", nasty blocking tight end, work the seams vertically, but he also has some ability after the catch, which I appreciate. This is an impressive athlete.
Yeah, he really is. And just is he a guy that's going to go out there and like juke a million people? No, I mean, he's 6'7". But as far as, but you saw in that last clip, Trev, watch him bounce it outside. He gets vertical, and then he makes that little dip and then gets outside, nice little stiff arm, and then he outruns the defense. Like he can bring that to the table. He certainly can bring that to the table. You see plays like this where he gets out in front, great lead blocker, just puts a kid on his back. But yeah, it's that ability to kind of make plays with the ball in his hands that you really weren't expecting. Like, when we saw him at Irish Invasion, him running down the field and catching deep routes is not something that surprised us.
Nope.
Him running out cuts and overs and drags and crossers are not things that surprise us. It's that, you're throwing tunnel screens at that kid, and he's doing it in a way where it actually projects to the next level, not necessarily on a tunnel screen, but on other types of routes. You're like, okay, that's really impressive. Here's another screen play where he sees that hole and just creases it and shows off the speed to get to the end zone for a big play. Yeah, he's impactful pass catcher.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And his contact balance too. I think it's a testament to like his foundation. Like I'm talking his physical foundation. You see it when he's run blocking. great contact balance. You see it right there, able to go up, make the catch in traffic, stay
Great
balanced.
catch radius here, Trev.
Yes, absolutely. Great catch. I mean, that was a heck of a ball by the quarterback, too.
This is the off his back foot. I mean,
Yeah.
but see, why is the quarterback throwing this ball?
Because he's 6'7".
Exactly. It's snapped over his head. He barely recovers it, and he knows what. I know Titus is running down the middle of the field, and he's 6'7", so let me throw it up. But this play right here tells you everything about where Titus Hawk is as a football player right now. The good and the bad. Number one, as a route runner, this is a bad route. You've got to use your hands better. You've got to take a better angle when attacking the leverage of that safety. You try to cross his face, and this is why you attack leverage, right? Because he doesn't attack leverage. He just kind of runs vertically and then tries to cross his face. Guy jams him up, right? Gets a body on him. Not a good route, okay? And then he gets kind of pushed around a little bit. But then what does he do, Trev? I don't care. This guy could not be covering me any better than he's covering me right now. And it doesn't matter because the quarterback's going to throw the ball at about 9 feet, and I'm going to go get it because I'm 6'7" and I have really long arms. And then that contact balance to come down. The DB can't do that. DB comes down, hits the ground, and he's done. Titus Hawk comes down, he catches it, and he runs. So these are the things you look at. Like, you see the athleticism, you see the great catch radius, you see the great hands, but you also see that as a route runner, he needs a lot of refinement. A lot of refinement. And because he is a two-sport guy. So when football's over, it's baseball season. It's winter ball. It's, you're getting into, spring ball. You're going into, summer travel leagues. He plays on travel leagues over the summer. He's not spending his whole off season working on, learning as a route runner. Here he is taking a kick back to the house from the 30. Look at that. Like I said, got a little bit of that make you miss there, Trev, and then he gets the speed. But so he's someone who will need more time. I don't know that he's a day one guy to help you out, but the potential is there. And I don't think they'll need a day one guy at tight end based on where the room is right now with James Flanagan. Has to come back in 27 unless he transfers because he's a true sophomore this year, eligibility wise. And then of course there's a good chance Cooper Flanagan comes back for a 5th year. You'll have Ian Premer, Preston Frizel, Jack Larson. So you're going to need work, but they have time to get him in there. And that's obviously the good thing with him, but the tools are impressive, Trev. I mean, isn't he the one carrying the ball here? Yes. This is him carrying the ball here on an end around and just outrunning the defense to the side. So there's a lot to work with here, Trev, a lot to work with, but he is a guy that does need work, but the traits are there: height, length, catch radius, speed, toughness, willingness to to play the physical football game. Big play potential. He's got the whole package. It's just his game is not going to be day one ready to go right now the way that Ian Premer was, or the way that even to a degree James Flanagan physically was last year. But it doesn't, the upside is really there. It's really high. Like, he's not someone that I ranked as high, as some of the other tight ends on the board in his current grade. But his upside grade is as high as anybody not named Jackson Dollar, in my opinion.
How did he compare to Cooper Flanagan when Cooper Flanagan was coming out of high school? Their skill sets are somewhat similar. Titus is a little bit more after the catch ability, but
Cooper was a lot thicker. I mean, Cooper was a two-way player at De La Salle. He was a defensive end and a tight end at De La Salle. Cooper was probably 20, 30 pounds bigger, stronger, just more ready to help out as a freshman. Titus is a more explosive athlete, but in a lot of ways, Trevor, how they're used in the pass game outside of the screens is very similar. Work the ends, work the digs, work the overs, work the seams, and those type of things. I think Cooper, where Titus brings something different to the table is what they do when the ball is caught. Like, they're very similar up to the catch point, where Titus does something a little bit different as we talked about. He brings a little bit of that playmaking ability after the catch. Whereas, and I think his upside as a blocker is as high as Cooper's. He's just not going to be able to do that as a true freshman the way that Cooper did, unless there's some dramatic change between now and a year from now. Okay, he'll need a year to get rid. Because, like, what's he going to be doing next winter and spring? It won't be trying to gain 30 pounds at Notre Dame. It's going to be he's playing baseball. Now, the good news is, as a first baseman, there shouldn't be the need to keep weight off the way that it would be if he was playing shortstop or center field or something like that. So it's not the same concern, but it does kind of keep you a little bit from having the really fast weight gains that we see from some freshmen. I do think it impacts that a little bit. Because like if he's an early enrollee, let's just say, he's going to do what? He's going to be a little bit in the winter program and then very quickly get to baseball, most likely. My hope would be, and I don't know that this would even be an option because he'd have to miss a year of baseball, but my hope would be is if he did enroll early, and I don't know if he will, for all I know, I would imagine he won't early enrollee. I imagine he's going to play a senior year of baseball. But like perfect world, he comes, he's an early enrollee, doesn't play baseball that year, and then goes out the next year as an actual freshman and plays baseball. But again, I don't see that happening because I think as a player who is a draftable player, he's going to want to play his senior year of baseball. But I'm just look at the lightning in the background.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
It's like, whoa. Yeah. It's like I get the scene from the movie Twisters, like, what's coming? Have you seen the new one, by the way?
I have not.
It's pretty good. Surprisingly pretty good. But anyway, so you guys will get a chance to watch a little bit more. Oh, there it is. There it is. Yeah, now you see it. So you guys get a chance to see a little bit more of Titus. But when you like I said, Drew, when you pop on the film, there's a lot to like here with Titus Hawk. He's got physicality. He's got some pop. He's strong for a 210-pound kid. Like it's strong, not strong like he's going to go block Boubacar Traore tomorrow, but strong like there's something to work with there that once he does put on the weight and does spend a little bit of time in the strength program, he's going to be a mover in the run game.
And fundamentally, it looks a lot better than what I initially thought as well. Like you read the reports about how he's a strong run blocker and he brings that to the table. He's 6'7". He's, going to be probably close to 220 by the time his senior year rolls around. My initial thought, because everybody gets their own gut reaction, kind of like an initial, like preconceived what they think this guy's going to be. I thought he was going to be deleting people in the run game, but I thought it was going to be a lot of like, let me just run into you with my shoulder because I'm just significantly bigger than what you are.
Right.
So a little bit more fundamentally sound than that. Good arm extension, great leg drive, and then that's when his overall strength comes into play, and he just absolutely deletes kids.
Because you guys don't get a chance to see. I'm going to put on some sophomore film while we're talking because there's a couple more blocking clips there, but that's one where he deletes somebody. But the game film is what really shows you. Like I'm not making my opinion of him as a blocker just by watching the film we just showed to you guys. When you see the game film, you see a little bit more of that blocking at the point. They don't line him up in block 9 techniques all day. You see him, he's in the slot a lot, he moves around, but you see more of that blocking from his game film than you do from the highlights.
Sure.
And by the way, he's also a 2-time All-State player in Oklahoma as a sophomore and as a junior. And this past year as a junior was also named the Oklahoma Prep's tight end of the year. So that factors into it as well. But this is a little bit of sophomore film. But all the tools are there, Trev. Some guys just need a little bit more time. Some guys show up the day that they're arrive and they're ready to go. Like Joe Walt showed up at Notre Dame ready to play. Mike McGlinchey needed a couple years. They both ended up being top 10 picks. Mike McGlinchey didn't start a game until the end of his redshirt freshman year. I think in 2014 it was the bowl game. I think against LSU was his first career start. Joe Walt was starting by the middle of his first freshman season, and probably that was a little too late. He probably should have been in there sooner than that, if we're being honest about it. So guys are just the development phase is just different, and that's something you have to monitor when you're looking at prospects. But Titus has all the tools. He has all the tools.
Yeah.
And I like the 6'7" weapon. I mean, you think about a kid, like the kids they have on quarterback, but let's just look at the 27 class. So I'm not trying to discount Teddy Gerard or Noah Grubbs. I'm just focusing on the 27 class. We talked about how much we love Champ Mons' ball placement. Well, you just gave Champ Mons a 6'4" big catch radius wide receiver and a 6'7" big catch radius tight end. He's going to throw some balls at these kids where you're just like, there's only one guy that has a chance to catch that ball, and it's the good guys if you're an offensive coach. You know what I mean? So you just gave a guy that's got a great arm and really good feel for ball placement 2 big catch radius pass weapons, and obviously tight end Titus Hawk at 6'7". He doesn't have super long arms, but he's got good arm length. Like Eli Raridan was that way. He had good arm length and a very good wingspan because he was a broad-shouldered guy, but he didn't have like 34.5-inch arms, that kind of thing. And I think Titus is very similar in that regard, where he doesn't have freaky long arms. Like, I don't think he's going to go to the combine and be like 35.5-inch arm length. It'll be 33 something, you know what I mean? Most likely. But the fact that he's also 6'7" and has, relatively broad shoulders is where you see that catch radius come from. And it's impressive one. This is, like I said, this is all sophomore film that you're looking at right now, but yeah, the tools are all there. And I think, Champ Mons and Noah Grubbs and guys like that are going to love this guy. I mean, think about the last 2 years. They've added a 6'7" tight end, a 6'6" tight end, and a 6'4.5" tight end who's really fast in Preston Frizzell. So just looking at the last two classes, they've added a lot of athleticism and a lot of size to the tight end position, where now Preston Frizzell is going to look really tiny compared to those guys. But they've definitely added some beef. And you can see there, he's, this is sophomore film, but he's a skinnier kid because he plays baseball, but he's got the kind of frame, Trev, especially when you watch his end of his sophomore year baseball film and like summer baseball film, you start to see when he's in the batter's box, like he's filling out a little bit. Like he's starting, that lower body is what's coming first, and then eventually the upper body will come next. But you're going to see he's starting to fill out a little bit. And that's going to only continue as he goes into his senior season.
Brian, let's wrap this up and talk about what's next at the tight end position, and then also what's next big picture recruiting for Notre Dame on the recruiting trail.
Well, at tight end, I think Notre Dame would still like to have two tight ends in this class. When you look at the current roster, when this 27 class shows up, Ty Washington's gone because he's going into his last year of eligibility, I believe. And if Cooper Flanagan does come back in 2027, it's his last year, meaning he won't have any eligibility beyond 2027 because he played as a freshman. He got last year back. And so, but he'll most likely be gone as well after the 2027 season. So then you look at it and say, okay, what do you have after that? You have James Flanagan, who will be a redshirt sophomore when this class shows up, and you'll have Ian Premer and you'll have Preston Frizzell. I don't know that James Flanagan is a 5-year player, and I don't know that Ian Premer is even a 4-year player. You have to at least prepare for the idea that if Ian Premer is as good as you think he is as a coaching staff, he's not a 4-year player, which means when this class shows up, he's only got 1 year left after that first year together. And so you start looking at it, and that's not a position where you necessarily want to play a bunch of freshmen. You can if they're good enough, but ideally this is kind of a part big boy position. So you'll have your Michael Mayers, you'll have your Kyle Rudolphs, you'll have your guys that come in and play right away. But ideally, you don't necessarily have to. And Titus is not necessarily a guy as of right now that you want to come in and play as a freshman. And so, but when you start looking beyond 2027, you don't want to go into 2028 and be like, hey, we need whoever you get in the 28 class to play as a freshman either. You want to start building up your numbers. And so the minimum need at the position is just one. But I think that because of what I just laid out, I think they'd still like to get two. What I don't think they're going to do is reach to get a second. But there's guys on the board that I think you'll still see them recruit. They'll probably still keep recruiting Jackson Dollar. I don't see him flipping from Georgia. But if he does, I think they'll have a shot. But I think what you're also going to see them do is really turn up the heat on Malik Howard, who's a guy that the staff likes. We've told you for a while the staff really likes him. We've never hid the fact that Jackson Dollar's the number one target on the board. That was absolutely true. We're not going to try to spin it now like, well, in reality, now that Jackson Dollar's committed to Georgia, we can tell you guys the truth. And that is the staff liked Malik Howard. The staff likes Malik Howard a lot, but Jackson Dollar was the top guy on the board. That's just the reality of it. But as I've also said, even when we thought they were going to get Jackson Dollar, that the staff really likes Malik Howard. And so when you look at kind of where they are there, I think that's where you're going to see them turn a lot of their attention now moving forward. There's another part on the board that you could maybe see them go, where if they miss out on Malik Howard and they're not able to flip Jackson Dollar, but they really just have to have a second tight end, I think you might see them turn to Landon Wolney. He's visited a couple times, but there's some questions about whether or not he has the size that they need to really thrive in Notre Dame. I think that's kind of why they haven't really pushed for him. But if he has like a nice summer and maybe he comes to Irish Invasion and looks really good, maybe he has a good senior year, then a player like that they could maybe turn to. But I think right now it's really about focusing on Malik Howard and saying we'd like to have 2 tight ends. Titus Hawk is the Y, Malik Howard's the H. We really like Malik Howard a lot, which they do. Let's try to pair these 2 players together, because even though there's a need for numbers, it's not – they're in a healthy place to where it's not we need this class to play as freshmen. It's more about as redshirt freshmen, that's when you may need them to kind of step up. And so Malik Howard's another guy that he may not be as advanced physically as a Jackson Dollar, but he's got a really good game where 1 year in the weight room and then all of a sudden as a redshirt freshman, we're like, hey, did you guys see Malik Howard this spring? He's out there balling. That kid's going to play for Notre Dame this year. He's got that kind of ability as well. And he also grades out as a 4-star player for me. So like with Titus Hawk, I gave him a 3.5-star grade on my just kind of gut reaction. That's what he's seen because he's got to fill out. He's got to do this. But then when I graded him, he was just inside the top 250 range of the current grade. And then he's got 4.5-star upside. Malik Howard is actually a guy that in the current grade is actually even a little bit higher than Titus Hawk because I love his game. But I also don't grade him the same way as Titus Hawk because you're going to use him a little bit differently. The H and the Y are graded similarly, but there's just a couple areas where I'm not going to ding the H as much as I will the Y. And so that's why I view them a little bit differently. But they're both good, really good football players. And if you're able to get Malik Howard, and again, it's a work in progress. He's got a lot of schools after him. His offer list and this push list is more impressive than his recruiting rankings. I'll just say that. But, so I think that's where we're going to see Notre Dame really try to push and try to get going with Malik Howard. Will they be able to get it done? That I don't know. That we'll see. He's got an official. I think the only official visit he's got set up so far is with Bama. And I think that's probably the school to beat right now. Notre Dame's going to try to push things and ramp things up and get him. I don't know if they're going to get him or not, but that's kind of where it's going to be with him.
Good deal. Let's talk what's next on the recruiting trail, big picture. What's up next for Notre Dame? They're starting to really heat up along this trail. You got Zayden Gamble the day of the Blue Gold game. Then you get Aiden O'Neal, Champ Mines. You get 2 more recruits today. So what's up next for this team?
I think so. Right now, there's only one player right now in the 27 class that has a commitment date set, and that's David Fuller-Runshaw from Chicago, defensive tackle from Chicago. There's 5 schools he listed. It's Notre Dame, Miami, Michigan, and I think Georgia and Texas Tech. I think the 2 players here are Notre Dame and Miami. Those are the 2 players. As we updated on the message board the other day, so if you're a premium message board, this, but it's Miami, Notre Dame. That's what it's going to come down to. Miami thought that they had him. Some people reported, and the Miami coaches felt good after he visited there. But then since then he's made 2 visits to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has kind of gained some momentum back there. So the staff obviously feels very good about where they're going. But hey, it's closing time. I mean, nothing's really official till they sign, right? So you're 11 days out from this one. So even if he called you today and said, "Hey, I'm coming," I'm still not feeling happy until he publicly makes that decision known, because this is a kid where serious dollars are being thrown around at him. Texas Tech just flat out tried to buy him. Unfortunately, I think the agent, from what I'm understanding, the agent was receptive to their pitch, but I don't think David at the end of the day was, and I don't think Mom was, for a host of reasons. Whereas Miami, she might be more willing to see him, go there maybe because it is a very good academic school, whereas Texas Tech is a different type of school. I'm not saying it's bad, it's different. So I think that one's going to come down to Notre Dame, Miami. That's a big one. Obviously, he's a very highly ranked player, Trev. That's one of those kind of needle-moving recruitments from a recruiting ranking standpoint, certainly. He's the number 9 overall player in the country on On3 Rivals. He's number 79 on 247, number 66 on ESPN. This is a surefire top 100 player that I know the Notre Dame staff would love to get. So, we'll kind of see if they're able to close on that one. Sticking to that position, there's 3 D linemen who I could see winding things down somewhat soon. And on top of David, obviously Braden Parks, I could see him making a pre-officials visit decision. I could see Jackson Vaughn making a pre-officials decision. I could see Abraham Cisse. Now, none of those things have been decided. And so somebody in the Miami chat just said the Miami's going to get in for David or Parks. Miami's not really a factor for Braden Parks. It's going to be Notre Dame or Oregon and Ohio State's also pushing. So if they don't get full of run shoe, I don't think they're going to get either of the Chicago kids. Just to give you the latest on that one, just make sure we're on the same page. But I don't know, the three guys I just mentioned, Braden Parks, Jackson Vaughn, and Abraham Cisse, have not said that they're going to make pre-official decisions. But I'm hearing enough from the camps of those three young men that you start hearing certain things that makes you think they're kind of ready to wind down. And we're starting to hear some of those things. So nothing is obviously official yet, but it wouldn't shock me if that's the case. Then you get into, okay, well, who else? Well, as of right now, a lot of the guys on the board are talking about taking officials. Leighton Von Brandt just released the top 4 yesterday. It's Notre Dame, Penn State, Auburn, and Florida. He's talking about taking all 4 of his official visits. Cameron Wagner wants to take all 4 of his official visits. Albert Simeon's going to take official visits. Now, there's been some talk that he may decide beforehand, but as of right now, that's kind of where they are. But there's a lot of Trenton Henderson Caden Henderson. Trenton Henderson's the 28 kid, but Caden Henderson is going to take official visits. Romeo Igwe is going to take official visits. Gavin Williams, I'm not sure where things stand with him. I believe Greedy James wants to take official visits. Tavares Harrington's going to take official visits. So there's not a lot of kids right now that are in decision-making mode. But I don't know that Aiden O'Neal 3 weeks ago was in decision-making mode. I don't know that David Fuller-Runshoe 2 weeks ago was ready to just, okay, I'm ready to be done by May 15th, right? These things change, and there just comes a point in time where I think it's just like, dude, I don't want to go through all the visits. I've done everything. I just want to have this over with. I'm tired of the phone calls. I'm tired of this. I want to decide where I'm going to go. I think there's some kids that could make those type of decisions here over the next 3 weeks before we get to official visit period. Now, as we get closer to the end of May, there's no need to stop to settle things down then, because your officials start right then. So I think that you're going to start, but I think you will see some kids here, Trev, that are going to wind things down. Like Julius Jones has talked about going on officials and then announcing in July. I could see him, maybe saying, okay, I've been to Oregon multiple times, been to Notre Dame, I'm ready to make a decision. He hasn't said that. I'm not telling you guys information that's private information. I'm reading the tea leaves, having done this for a long time. You start to get the sense there's nothing about Cameron Wagner that makes me think he wants to stop the recruiting process. There's nothing about Leighton Von Brandt that makes me think they want to stop the recruiting process. So if they decided to commit in a week, that surprised me a little bit. It could happen, but it surprised me a little bit. With other guys, it's like, yeah, I could see them wanting to wind things down. Like Caden Henderson, to me, is nowhere close to making a decision. And that's actually, for Notre Dame, that's a good thing. With some guys, it's good that they're not going to decide soon. You want them to go to officials, because if they decided now, it probably wouldn't be you. And so for some of those guys, you'd like for that to happen. You want it to take a little bit longer. And then if, you're able to get some more of these kids on campus, then what helped them last year is when they got to June and guys like Joey O'Brien came for officials and he hadn't decided yet, it was like 5 kids taking an official and then like 12 commits. You know what I mean? And so I think you're getting close to where that's what it's going to look like a lot in this class too, as you're now at 14. I could see them getting to 16 or 17 potentially before we get to official visits. So then when, they're trying to get that final 7 to 8 kids in the class, those kids are visiting 4 one weekend, 4 or 5 the next, and they're just surrounded by a bunch of commits. And, I could see that certainly playing out that way. But just one guy scheduled to make a decision between now and official visits, but I could see a few more deciding they are ready to be done. And that usually happens quick, Trev. Like you start to see signals, but then it's just like, boom, they just decide they're going to announce next week or in 2 weeks, like David Fuller-Runshoe did. Like that came out of nowhere with him. Like this is a kid that likes going places. He's getting big offers, and it just seemed like he's going to take his officials. This is probably going to take a while. Marcus Fakatu's that way. Like, I'd be surprised if Marcus Fakatu announced tomorrow, I'm going to decide in May. That shocked me. I think he's going to take his officials. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just they're different time frames. But when Braden announced that, I was like, whoa, didn't see that coming. And so I think that's kind of where they are, Yeah.
Good deal, man. Well, hey, this is a heck of a way to start out the week, covering 2 recruitments and 2 commitments, and Jackson Coleman, a wide receiver, and Titus Hawk, a tight end. Definitely a good way to start out the week, that's for sure. Brian, to take us home here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We have a daily mailbag to take us home, and this one is geared for recruiting, because covered a lot of recruiting topics today. If this does happen to be your first mailbag, you can put MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji that lets us know to set your question aside. Now, super chats do get bumped up to the top. And Brian, if I remember correctly, there's a pretty cool super chat in there from Pete Weber to get us started today. Super chat from our guy, Pete Weber. Appreciate you, Pete. The newest addition to the IB family came last week. Katie Grace was born last Tuesday. Mom and Dad couldn't be happier, and she's looking forward to rooting on the Irish this fall. Go Irish. And
Pete sent me a picture of his newborn, and I always look whenever somebody sends me a picture of their newborn, because kind of like newborns all kind of look similar, eyes closed, laying. I mean, they look different, but they look similar. I like looking at the faces of mom and dad, and especially when it's the first, just the absolute joy plus my life will never be the same. And I mean that in a good way. It's like, you ever watch the movie or the TV show, How I Met Your Mother? And like Barney's just like this, just misogynistic, chauvinistic, just like manho. And the scene where he holds his daughter for the first time, and you see just a complete 180 character shift of you're the most, you know what I mean? Like this is a guy that's never cared about anybody more than himself or his suits. And like, it's a TV show, but like my sister was that way. My brother-in-law was that way. Like everybody knows that way. The first time they hold their kid, it's just like, my life will never be the same. And it's a good thing. And so to see that in his face was pretty cool to see. But we're happy for you, my dude. That's amazing. And so we actually had somebody in the chat that said their kid goes to sleep to our show. So I wonder if Pete's going to be one of those people where they turn on the show when the kid needs to take a nap, because it'll put the kid to sleep. So, but that's awesome, dude. We're super happy for you.
Heck yeah, man. Super chat from Steve Rolfe. Appreciate you, Steve. Is Valor Christian a dominant program in Colorado?
Yeah, they're always really good. I mean, Christian McCaffrey came from there. His brother Dylan was a quarterback there. He went to Michigan, I think, out of high school. Gavin Sawchuk played at Valor Christian, a kid from a couple of years ago that went to Oklahoma. He's from there. So, and then also today, I believe an offensive lineman from Valor Christian committed to Washington, I believe too. So I wouldn't say it's like the dominant program but it's like, I mean, they're in the playoffs every year. They've won state championships. Yeah, that's a pretty darn good Denver program. I think they lost to Cherry Creek in the playoffs this year. But yeah, they're usually really good. And Cherry Creek's also usually pretty good as well. So yeah, they're a dominant program. I don't know, like they're the dominant program. Like, there's times where like, yeah, there's a lot of good schools in Ohio, but Ignatius is the dominant program, or Moeller's the dominant program. I don't think that they're necessarily like that all the time, but there's certainly years like that.
From Iden Benami, personally, who you taking, Coleman or Cooper?
I mean, a lot of this, Iden, is what are you looking for? I think the one thing that intrigued Notre Dame about Jackson Coleman is that he is more of a pure boundary than Cade Cooper is. I think Cade Cooper can play the boundary, but I don't know that he's a pure boundary. He's more Cam Williams than he is Micah Gilbert, in that, not skill set wise, but in that, like, Cam can play the boundary, but I kind of like the idea of Cam maybe playing some other places too. Where with Micah, he could play X, but he's a W in this system. Cade could play W, but I also like him as a potential, Z, potential X. Jackson is more of a pure, like, his projection is, in my opinion, first to the boundary, and then he can also play other spots. But it's one of those things where I love Cade Cooper. Everybody in this chat knows that. I'm a big Cade Cooper guy, and I hope they still take him. I haven't talked to anybody at Notre Dame that said that they're not going to. I'm just saying I hope that they still do. But let's just say they only take 2, and the next guy that jumps on board is Julius Jones Jr., just for argument's sake. Well, Jackson Coleman wanted to be here. Cade Cooper had every chance in the world to commit to Notre Dame. He could have committed multiple times between now and then. They would have taken his commitment if he wanted to commit after his unofficial visit. He chose not to, and Jackson Coleman decided to jump on board. And would I have, if I was in Notre Dame's shoes, knowing how I feel about Cade Cooper, who I think is a very underrated and good player, would I have slow played Jackson Coleman to wait for Cade Cooper? No. If Jackson Coleman wanted to come first, I'd take Jackson Coleman. And then I'd go talk to the head ball coach about, hey, can we go to 3 this year? Can we do that? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, Cade Cooper, we want you to. I would have taken the first one that wants to come. Julius Jones is a guy that I would hold off on taking commitment. If it came down to I got one spot and I can't go beyond one spot and Julius hasn't decided yet, sorry, Jackson, we need you to wait. I got to find out what's going on with Julius first. But between him and Cade Cooper, I'll take first one who wants to be here. And Jackson Coleman clearly wanted to be here. And Cade Cooper may still want to be at Notre Dame, but he wanted to go through the process first, which is his right. Fine. More power to him. But that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
You know?
In a perfect world, we're having the and discussion, not the or discussion. But you're right. Sometimes numbers get limited. And when we broke down Jackson Coleman's recruitment, we talked about just what the Notre Dame's roster size is going to be, what their depth chart was going to look like at wide receiver over the next couple seasons. So sometimes it's that scenario. I'm with you.
Got another one for my den.
Is offering a 2029 recruit too early? Thoughts?
It varies from kid to kid. I mean, sometimes with the way recruiting goes now, Trev, you've got to offer a kid now if you want to get in the mix. You can't wait. Yeah. Is taking a commitment from a 2029 kid too early? No. Is offering a top kid from 2029 too early? Sadly, no. It should be too early, but that's not the world we live in. The reality is if you want to get involved with an elite quarterback in 2029, you may not be able to wait another year. You may be so far behind the 8 ball, you can't. But I wouldn't take a commitment from very many 29 kids, meaning basically freshmen that are going to be sophomores. I don't know that I'd take any commitments unless it was like just a freak. I don't know that you needed to wait till Jeremiah Smith's sophomore year to know that he was going to be a dude. But, outside of that, that's too early to be taking kids. But offering, it is. I don't love it, but you've got to do it now.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed completely. From Jay Melvin, Brian, you've said Notre Dame is basically the big dog in recruiting now, and bottom feeder teams like Texas Tech or USC will completely overpay to get kids thereafter. Do you think Notre Dame is the best recruiting team?
The best? No. I don't think that what Notre Dame has done the last 2 years, including what they're doing in 27, puts them in where they're Bama from the early 2010s and everybody else is below them. No, they're not doing that. And I don't know that anyone's going to do that right now in this era of NIL. What I think is true, however, and this is very relevant, is they are in the group of big dogs. There's a group of about 4 or 5 schools that are just killing it right now in high school recruiting. Notre Dame is definitely in there. Texas is definitely in there. Oregon's definitely in there. Texas A&M is definitely in there. And then you can debate who the next 2 or 3 are. Ohio State is in there to a degree, but as we've said, they haven't killed it with high school recruiting the same way they have in past years. Still very good. I'm curious how their 27 class is going to finish. I would lean towards putting Ohio State in there, but I just want to see how this 27 class goes. I think you can make a case that Miami should be in that conversation for what they're doing with high school recruiting as well. So, I mean, you could say maybe 6 or 7, but there's just that group of schools that are just kind of way out in front of it. Oh, and Georgia. Like those are like in this group to varying degrees from year to year, who's 1, who's 8. But they're the ones that are just consistently dominating high school recruiting. Now, I've got my eye on what the new regime at Oklahoma is doing. So they went out and hired the guy that used to run the Senior Bowl. They hired like Dawson from the NFL. Like they're doing things a little bit different. And this recruiting class they're putting together right now is off to a very strong start. So I've kind of got my eye on what Jim Nagy and Lake Dawson are doing at Oklahoma. Could they jump into this mix? Like LSU's not focusing on high school recruiting as much. So to be like, oh, Notre Dame is killing LSU in high school recruiting. Well, they better, because LSU's not trying to kill it in high school recruiting, right? So, I mean, it's a little bit different. And you have to take that in consideration. Like, oh, LSU has no chance of playing with Notre Dame in 5 years. Well, why do you say that? Did you see their recruiting class in high school and compared to? Well, yeah, but did you see their portal class compared to Notre Dame's portal class? Teams are doing it differently now. And so you've got to say, who are the teams trying to kill it in high school recruiting and who isn't? And is Notre Dame in that top group of who is? I'd say, yeah. And then they're in the top half of that group. And USC needs to be in that conversation as well. They're starting to get there too, but I need to see USC do it for a couple classes before I fully jump on board. But yeah, there's that group of schools that Notre Dame is in the conversation of. And I wouldn't put Texas Tech in there. They're buying certain players, but they're still primarily going through the portal, which is why they can spend a bunch of money on certain guys, because they're not trying to bring in 30 high school kids. And I don't know that I agree with that, but that's the strategy they're going with. USC is trying to be more high school driven.
Agreed.
That's kind of where I'm at. Good question.
From Raymond Hartman, if Notre Dame lands Parks, Fularanshu, Cisse, Vaughn, and Fakatu, it's the best D-line class since when?
1990? I mean, Bryant Young. I mean, think about this. The 1993 defensive line, which had Bryant Young, Jim Flanagan, Oliver Gibson, Brian Hamilton. I think all four of their starters were 1990 recruits. I mean, that was an elite D-line class. It's maybe since then. It's better than last year's because there's just more guys. It's last year's class plus add another D tackle and add another D end to last year's class. That's basically what it is. Add another dude at D end and another dude at tackle. You could argue last year's class, pound for pound, our 4 versus your 6. Our pound for pound, our 4 is as good as your 6. But when your 5 and 6 are as good as your 1 through 4, and then yeah, you're better because you have more. You both have great things, but you have 6 great things. You have 4 great things. Well, who's going to win? The 6 great things, as opposed to 2 great things and 4 good things compared to 4 great things. Well, I'm going to take last year's 4 great things over 2 great things and 4 good things. It's be 6 great things and 4 great things, and you get excited about that. So yeah, it would be even better. And it would be the best 2-year class literally since I've been born. I don't know that Notre Dame would have had a 2-year class like what they're potentially could put together. Now, if I was predicting today, I would not predict that they get Parks, Fularanshu, and Fakatu. It's possible, but I don't know that I'm going to predict it. But if you replace Fakatu with Xavier Muhammad, I'd feel the exact same way, because he's a dude as well. Have you seen him yet, Trev? I don't know if we haven't talked a lot about him. He's basically, and somebody texted me the other day, and they're like, he reminds him a lot of Kari Wilder from Ohio State. That's Ohio State. I said, I can see it. He's a big power end that I think projects to be a D tackle. He's like 6'4", 250. I'd feel the same way if he was the 6th guy, if they decided to go that route. But even if they only get 5, and so let's say they get the 2 ends and then 2 of those 3 tackles, whatever order you want to put them in, it's still the same answer, because again, now it's 5 great things versus 4 great things. It's still the best class since 1990.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the best class of my lifetime, that's for sure. And that's a great spot to be in, considering I said the exact same thing after they landed the 2026 class. So yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, it would be pretty nice. No doubt. Yeah.
From Ballpeen Shillelagh, why do you think that the national recruiting people haven't thought to do current and upside grades like you guys do? It seems like a much cleaner system.
I don't know that would sell as much, to be honest with you. And it's a little bit more work. I don't know why they don't do it. I just think it'd be a little bit more challenging to put into a, like, how do you rank your top 100 at that point in time? Like, in order to do a proper top 100, you need to include the projection. Otherwise, it makes it a lot harder to do a ranking. because like then you got to explain like, so okay, well, I'm sitting there talking about, Brian, you always brag about how you nailed Boubacar Traore, and they're like, no, you didn't. You had him as like the number 10 defensive player in the class. I'm like, yeah, because of the way that I rank my class, he was number one on upside. Well, if I was doing it the way that could get confusing, because if I was doing the ranking the way that they do, I'd have Boubacar a lot higher because I would have incorporated the upside ranking into it. I think it just makes for a little bit more efficient process for what they're trying to do. They're not really trying to give you like real analysis. I think sometimes they are. When I mean I'm referring to like the bosses. The bosses want things that they can sell and click on. They want things they can use and say, hey, we want to call him a 4-star. We want to call him this. We want to call him that. I don't know that it would be as successfully clickbaity if it was current versus upside. That's just kind of my 2 cents. Other than that, I mean, I'm just guessing. I don't know why they don't do it.
Yeah, if I were to speculate, by the masses, I think people just want very easy consumable content that they can rattle off at the top of their head. It's like so-and-so's a 5-star. And then they don't have to put too much on. So, okay, well, is that a 5-star upside grade? Is that how they're coming out right now? Like, what does that look like? I think by and large, that's what it is. And I love what we do here. But to give 5-star, to give upside grades and current grades to every recruit going to every team, like
thousands of recruits. Yeah. Where I'm doing 50, 60, 70 guys like that, ranking them. The other thing too, Trevor, is you could cheat if you wanted to do it that way. Like every kid, like I could give every kid like a 3.5-star grade, a 5-star upside. Well, I mean, I nailed him. He ended up not panning out, but I gave him a 3-star grade. But then if he pans out, you're like, well, I nailed it because I gave him a 5-star upside grade. So you got to be careful with how you use that too.
Yeah.
And that you don't abuse it, so that's why I say is don't just look at the ranking when you say, did you nail a kid or not? That's why I was like, when you want to know if I nailed a kid or not, read what I wrote about him. Like, why did I give him the upside grade? Because otherwise you could just cheat and give everybody like a super high upside grade. And early, I've had to actually, with how I do rankings, be a little bit more critical with the upside grade. Like really think through, okay, do you really want to give this kid a 4.5-star grade? And so that's why I even went further with my range. So like 4-star top 150 is different than 4-star top 250. And I made the 4.5-star out to the top 75. So there's a little bit more range. So that way I can be more thoughtful of, okay, this kid is more of a top 100 type of guy as opposed to top 75. So I'm not going to give him the 4.5-star grade. So it's be more critical because otherwise you could just cheat and guarantee that you're never wrong. And that's why you've got to make sure you don't abuse the system and get everybody a high upside grade. Cause then it's like, well, yeah, so then the only guys you get wrong are the guys that you ranked a real high current grade wise that don't pan out. Now you get those wrong, but your hit rate would be way higher with that if you don't take pride in like wanting to be accurate with both. But to take pride in that, it's a lot more work to come up with how that grading system works. And I'm breaking down, I'm like truly grading no more than 100 guys per year. And the couple times I've done a top 100, I've done it the way they do it. I put the upside grade in there and then project it because I can't watch 600 kids on film and do multiple grades. Hey, here's where they are. It's all together and you put it that way. So when I do it the way I do it, I don't do it like you idiots need to do it like I do it. I understand why they do it the way they do it. I don't think they're wrong for doing it the way that they're doing it. I just wish they'd stop like puffing out their chests for like, oh, we got this wrong. Well, yeah, you're arguing percentages, not, it's a lame argument. Like just stop puffing. Just that's why I say, if you want to know if I got a kid right, read what I wrote about him. Don't just look at the grade.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. From Jay Melvin, Brian, can you rank these 5 recruiting states, Texas, Florida, Georgia, California, and Louisiana, since they're considered the best? And are there any other states that you think belong with them?
It depends on what you're talking about. Are you talking about per capita? Because if so, Alabama's a great state per capita. If we're talking per capita, you got to remove Louisiana from the. I mean, if you're not talking per capita, you got to remove Louisiana because they can't compete with Texas, Florida. Actually, remove everybody outside of Texas, Florida, and California, just from a sheer volume. Actually, let me hold on. Let me look this up. What? Because there's give me 1 second, Trev.
No, you're good, man. Off the top of your head, while you're looking things up,
Because those three are. Go ahead.
Off the top of my head, I would say Pennsylvania probably deserves to be in that conversation as well. Notre Dame's gotten a lot of top tier recruits from Pennsylvania before. Say all you want about James Franklin, the dude could recruit, and some of his better recruits have also came from Pennsylvania. I think they should be in there before like a Louisiana.
Well, let me. So here we go. So like this is where over the last decade, this gives you an example. So Max Preps posted something on April 26th of over the last decade where top prospects came from. And you've got California or Florida's the most with 299. Texas is next with 298. They're clearly out in front of everybody else. Next most is California with 219. And then right after that's Georgia with 209. Then there's a big drop between those four. Louisiana's at 107. Ohio's at 105. Those are the only ones with over 100. Ironically, the next best state, and this tells you exactly why Notre Dame recruits the way that they recruit, the next state with just volume is North Carolina with 96. And then Alabama's at 85. And then you get to Pennsylvania's actually at 77. And Indiana's way down there at 38. The states around them, Michigan 71, Illinois 71, Ohio 105. That's why Notre Dame doesn't recruit a lot of in-state kids. But I think that gives you a sense, Trevor, of like it's Florida, Texas, California, Georgia. Florida and Texas is way more than everybody else. I would argue that California is making a charge. California, the last couple of years, is starting to produce more high-level players. But like there's this other site that I found of what state has produced the most NFL draft picks from 2015 to 2025. It's either Texas or Florida every year except once, and that's 2017. Georgia had the most. The 2026 NFL draft, Texas had the most at 33, Florida at 27, Georgia 22, California 19, Ohio 11, and then Alabama, Maryland with 10 each. So you're seeing obviously there's variations from year to year, but those are the states that are kind of that dominate that. And that's why Notre Dame is trying to do more in Florida and Texas, because there's just so many more high-level players there. And what they're doing is like right now, I think Notre Dame feels that they're going to have more success in Florida right now than they will in California. Not just success winning recruits, but then also getting the kind of kids that are going to fit into your program. And that's why they've been a little bit more choosy when they got to California. And they look for more of the Madden Faramos, the Kingston Viliama Asas, the Gavin Williamses, because they're not just trying to get good players, but they're trying to get guys that they think fit. And I don't think that they feel as many California kids fit with what Notre Dame's trying to do as what they find in Texas, and then also Florida and North Carolina. And I think that plays a big role in what they're doing. But those are things you kind of have to look at and say, okay, why are we putting more into this state? New Jersey is a pretty small state, but they're at 70 kids, 70 NFL players to 77 for Pennsylvania. Massachusetts is like, 19, Connecticut 15, right? So like not that much bigger of a state than like if you were to put New Jersey and say, okay, New Jersey size-wise, geographically, electoral votes is about the same size as Rhode Island, Maryland, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine all together. It's rough. Well, you put all those states together, Trev, there's 36 kids that went to the NFL draft this past year, or that past 10 years, and 70 from Jersey. So it's by identifying the states where they put a lot of guys in the NFL draft. And certain states are able to put out a lot and some aren't. And you've got to make sure that you're going into that. Missouri's a state that's growing. They're at 40. It's not great the last 10 years, but it's starting to produce more and more and more. And so I think that's where you get to those trends, and that's why North Carolina is there. I'll bet you if you'd have done this 10 years ago, North Carolina is not in the top, 7 or 8 like they are now. And that's why I say you talk about Pennsylvania, Trevor. If you'd have done this back in the 80s, that they're probably one of the top 3 or 4. But that's just, like I said, that's the nature of population shifts in a country that have nothing to do with sports and everything to do with where are the jobs.
Sure.
I mean, that's really what it boils down to. Back then, I mean, steel, coal, a lot of factories. I mean, growing up in Lima, Ohio, it was a much bigger city, much more well-to-do city, because you had two oil refineries, you had a tank plant, you had 2 car plants. You had a lot more there. Well, now the Ford factory's at half capacity of what it was. One of the refineries is shut down. The tank plant doesn't produce as much, and so guess what? A lot of people leave because the jobs aren't there. And so that's why you see some of these shifts. North Carolina, when I was in college, if you'd have gone around to the Raleigh area, it looks a whole lot different than it does now. And so you just got to be able to follow those population shifts and have somewhat of a predictive aspect of like, hey, there's a lot of growth here. Let's maybe start investing in that state a little bit more now. So that way, when it starts paying off down the road, from an athlete standpoint, we're more prepared to thrive there. But based on pure numbers, it's Florida, Texas, California, Georgia. And then what did I say the next state was, Trev? Was it Louisiana? So
I think so.
2, 3, 4. Yeah, Louisiana's 2 ahead of Ohio. But as I said, there's a big difference between Louisiana and the other 4. Georgia's of those 5, Georgia's 4th at 209. Louisiana's next at 107. So from a pure volume standpoint, I don't think Louisiana belongs in that conversation. But if you turn it into a per capita discussion, then Louisiana and Alabama are 2 of the best states in the country at producing NFL talent.
Good deal.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, let's get to the next one from Michael Huff.
So, guys, since we've been shopping down those rare aisles, tell me, does the food taste better?
I mean,
Go Irish.
Basically, after eating at, like, with all due respect to Logan Steakhouse, after eating at Logan Steakhouse, which is a nice steak, good meal, cheap meal, it's just been nice to eat at Ruth's Chris the last couple of years, and I'll just leave it at that.
From Ballpeen Shillelagh, how much of a difference do you think it makes in wide receiver recruiting to have Champ Mons committed?
I think it certainly helps. I don't know that you're going to feel that immediately. Like, I don't think that's why Jackson Coleman and Titus Hawk committed Notre Dame. Does it help you solidify Julius Jones Jr.? Yeah, it could. Is it going to help you with 2028 commits? Yeah, it could. So I think it certainly helps. It doesn't hurt. That's for darn sure. It certainly helps to get a kid like that, especially with Florida recruiting. It's not just receivers, just Florida recruiting in general.
Yeah, absolutely. From Jay Melvin, Brian, you might not be able to do this, but could Irish Breakdown do your own recruiting team rankings list, the teams that have the best recruiting classes? I trust you much more than 247 or On 3.
I think every year for the last 3 years I've said I'm going to do that. And then I start and just realize how much time it takes. Because in order to give like a true ranking of everyone, I have to literally break down every kid that everybody signed. And that just takes a lot. So what I can do and what I do is I give you, okay, here are what are perceived as the 15 best, and I'll break those down and say, hey, look, I've looked at their film, I've looked at Notre Dame's film, and I'm telling you that class isn't better than Notre Dame's. And then you got to look at needs and all that other kind of stuff. So I'd love to, and maybe down the road, if Irish Breakdown grows enough to where I can hire a couple more writers, I'll have more time to do stuff like that. And that would be something that we'd certainly do if that were to be the case. But just right now, I'm running the business, I'm writing articles, I'm doing breakdowns, I'm editing everybody's stuff. Like I'm on every podcast. So like 3 hours a day doing this, and I love doing it all. But I dream big sometimes, like I'm going to do this, I'm going to start this. And then you realize like, dude, this is going to take a whole lot more time than I have to give. Like, I'm still trying to finish the rankings of the mock draft thing we had for the draft rankings. Remember we did that, Trev? I still haven't been able to sit down and do those. I need to finish that today so I can get the merch out to the winners. But I haven't forgotten about it. It's just, it takes time. And so sometimes you bite off more than you can chew. So as much as I would enjoy doing that, Jay Melvin, I just don't. That's just not something I want to promise you guys because of just how much time it takes. So, yeah.
From Salty, considering how quickly Jackson Coleman responded to Notre Dame's overtures, was he always a Notre Dame kid that did not get the proper attention earlier?
From the standpoint of, is he a great Notre Dame fit? Yes. Was he a kid that like grew up rooting for Notre Dame and just was waiting on the offer? That I don't know. I couldn't tell you that. But as far as like a kid who naturally is going to be, I'm going to Notre Dame because they're my team, I don't know. Naturally, it's like, hey, everything about Notre Dame is what I'm looking for. So when they come calling, it's a natural fit like Stanford used to be for kids as well. Sure. I can definitely say that. I can't necessarily answer the other one at this point.
From Saints for Irish, what are the selling points for Georgia over Notre Dame besides NIL?
Well, for some kids, it's going to be location. For some kids, it's going to be, I think that the scheme fit is better for me. For some kids, it's like Georgia still puts more guys in the NFL than Notre Dame, and at certain positions, that's certainly true. I still think playing in the SEC is a big draw for some kids. So, and look, let's be honest, for some kids, the fact that Georgia doesn't force you to go to class and do all those things is a selling point for some kids. So, but that's also why I had a friend of mine text me, he goes, it was just odd to see Jackson Dollar down to Notre Dame and Georgia. Because they couldn't be more, you couldn't find two more polar opposite programs as far as just the type of young men that they want to produce. And the priorities that they have off the field could not be any different. And so that's why you actually don't see Notre Dame and Georgia as the final two for a kid very often. You just don't. You don't see Notre Dame and Alabama as the final two very often. That's what made Elijah Golden's thing so different. It's like you don't see Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Alabama as a kid's final three very often.
Yeah.
But that's why you see Notre Dame and Miami going after the same kid more. Because they're, you see Notre Dame and USC because there was a level of, hey, that's a decent academic school. That's why you see Notre Dame and Texas A&M go at each other a little bit more than you see Notre Dame go against Florida or Georgia, because it's kids are looking for sometimes different things. And if they're looking for certain things, they're not going to like Notre Dame. And if they're looking for certain things, they're not going to like Georgia. So like I know some parents in the last 3-4 years that I've talked to, they're like, there's no way I'd let my kid go to Georgia. And others don't care. They're completely tuned out to all that stuff. They either don't know or don't care. For others, it's like, if you are this type of parent, then there's no way in heck you're going to let your kid go to Georgia. At least as best you can in preventing it. You know what I mean? You can't always prevent it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different points on the table. I mean, one of them, too, if we're being completely honest, like Georgia's won back-to-back national championships significantly more recently than the last time Notre Dame won theirs. They don't view it the same way that fans do. When they were going through early stages of high school and latter stages of middle school, that's when Georgia was winning back-to-back natties. And, they're in the SEC championship every year. So that's another selling point, too. I don't think it will be one for long that Notre Dame won't be able to also bring to the table talking about winning national titles. But there's a lot. From Battle in the Trenches, when a recruit makes a decision just because he wants to be done with it, is that concerning that he's making a knee-jerk choice and is a decommit risk, or does it depend on the recruit?
I don't view that as a knee-jerk choice, because when you're tired of something, it doesn't just happen overnight. You don't just wake up on a Tuesday like, I hate recruiting. This sucks. I loved it yesterday, but today I hate it. You start getting kind of tired of it. The last couple of visits you go on, you just don't. You're like, I got to go another visit. Like you're just like, and now I got to do 3 more. Like, some kids look at officials like, dude, it's just a chance to go party for a couple of days on this school. Like, I know everything I need to know about these kids. I just want to go hang out with the players, or I just want to go party, or I want to do whatever else. And for kids who that matters to, then they'll do that. That's not true for every kid. Some kids genuinely don't know. They have questions they want to ask. Maybe they didn't get to be at a school 2-3 times, but now it's like, why are so many kids committing early? Well, because a lot of these kids are going on 2-3 visits to each of these schools. They're going, because the process is sped up so much that they visited last summer for a camp. They went to a game in the fall. And then when they get to this spring, April visit, it's like, this is my 3rd time on campus. What else do I need to learn that I'm not going to, in July, that I'm not going to learn now? So, but some kids also just want the whole experience because they want all the data they can to make a decision. Some kids just want to go on the officials because they want to go party at these colleges over the summer. Whatever, it's their decision. So when a kid makes a decision that I'm kind of over the process, those kids usually don't flip very often because they're literally over the process. They're not taking your calls anymore. They're not interested in going on visits anymore. They're truly shutting it down. I mean, I've heard kids who've made decisions based on that where dads have to call coach and be like, stop calling my son. He's done. So kids who are still having those conversations are not kids who are sick of recruiting. Those are kids that are making a sooner decision because they felt pressured to make a decision. Those are the kids you worry about. Hey, school called me and said, hey, we've only got one spot left, and I wanted to jump on board because I don't want to lose a spot, but I wasn't quite sure it's where I wanted to go. Those are the kids I worry about. The kids who's over the process, I think if you went back and did crunch the numbers, this is just so I'm giving you anecdotal or maybe my gut feel based on having done this for a long time. The kids who stop because they're tired of it are kids who are tired of it, and it doesn't turn back on unless something changes with the school they're at. So no, I'm not as concerned about that, because I also think the one part of this I disagree with is you call it knee jerk, and I don't think it's knee jerk at all. I think it's the opposite. I think I've been doing this for a year. I've gone on all these visits. I'm done. I'm over it. I just want to stay home on the weekends, and I want to work out. I don't have to be dealing with this all summer. I want to go on family vacation this summer. Like we were going to go to, I don't know, do kids still go to Disney World now? I don't know, like what families do on vacations, but like we can't do that now. We were going to go down to, my family used to go to Atlantic Beach over the summers. My whole family, my aunts, uncles, everybody. I can't do that now because I got to take these official visits. Like a kid who's done with the process is like, I don't want to miss out on that I know where I want to be. I've been to all these places. Those kids my experience, don't flip very often.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, shoot, it was like that for me, and I didn't even go play college football. Like, if you're trying to make an informed decision, you go take visits at multiple schools, and they have like their different tour days and, tour the campus, and you see all that. Dude, I went to like 9 just in the state of Indiana. And towards the end of it, I was like, all right, dude, there's just not much more that I have to see. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how it is for some of these kids making these decisions. It's you find the program that aligns with you, but you want to see what all's out there. But I'm with you. I don't know if I'd consider that knee jerk.
Yeah, agree. Let's get to another one here. Trev, this is an interesting one.
Has Notre Dame gap closed Oregon?
Yeah, I think that's already been done. Like Oregon's never been a better program than Notre Dame over a period of time. I mean, well, rarely. I think you could look at the late 2000s and the early 2010s and say so. But even right in between Oregon's 2 best years ever, 2010 and 2014, you had Notre Dame in 2012 playing for a title during a downtime. But Oregon's literally never won a national championship in college football. They've been in the playoffs, twice? And they're 2-2. So, okay. Went to the semifinals this year, lost by 30. They played for the national title in 2010. Notre Dame played in 2012. They played in 2014. They got blown out the second time. So they've played for a championship 3 times since 2010. Notre Dame's done it 4 times. So I don't know that Notre Dame is ever my first statement was a bit hyperbolic. There's certainly been periods of time where Oregon was a better program than Notre Dame. Like there's no doubt. The end of the Chip Kelly era to early Mark Helfrich, of course Oregon's a better program. But like they're brief stints and then Notre Dame quickly catches back up. And I think that's true now. I think there's a perception among fans of like Oregon's is like this program that Notre Dame's trying to chase because they're the cool program, but I don't view that as Notre Dame trying to chase Oregon. Yeah.
I don't either.
It's my 2 cents. All right, let's get to one from Indy Football 115.
Do you guys put any stock in crystal ball, or do you feel it can be virtually ignored?
I'm going to say this, and I'm going to leave my personal opinion of the veracity of that. First of all, I think I'll just say this. I think it's BS the way that they do that. But here's what I mean by that. So Jackson Coleman told Notre Dame he wanted to commit. And so Pretty soon after that, a bunch of crystal balls came out for him, like 6, 7, 8, 9 in a row. Buddy sent me a text message. He's like, this all happened in the last 10 minutes. That's bullcrap. When you know a kid has already committed, you shouldn't be able to put a crystal ball in because you're not actually doing anything. You literally got told by Steve Wiltfong that this happened, or by Tom Lloyd that this happened, right? Because why? Not because Notre Dame was telling people, but the kid did the right thing, called the other schools and told them, and then they went and told the recruiting analysts, which I think is jacked up. So then you have like the 8, 9 people, like the Oklahoma site, the Penn State site. I'm like, they're not even recruiting this kid. But they're putting those crystal balls in and taking the kid's moment so they can pretend like I had this great success rate. Well, yeah, you put a crystal ball in after he committed and you were told he committed. Like, that's Bush League. That's why I've said, if you really want me to respect crystal balls at all, then whatever picks you make within 30 days of that kid committing don't count. You want to, so if you were talking about how Oregon's the team to beat for Julius Jones Jr., and you got a crystal ball in April for him, but now in May, when it appears it's trending in the opposite direction, and you change your pick because you read the tea leaves, that doesn't impress me. But what if you were the person who was saying back then, I think this is overstated, I still like where Notre Dame is at? Then that impresses me. So I think the whole process sucks. I think when a kid has already committed and you're told he committed and then you go put a pick in, that's a douchebag move. I'll just say it. That's a douchebag move. And when like 8 or 9 people do it and you've taken that kid's moment, that's a douchebag move. But as a fan, it should tell you something. Hey, I think this kid's going to commit. So there's value in it for fans who have to know and can't wait for the kid to actually announce his decision. You've got to know now. Sure, there's value in it. But I think it sucks. But when you see a bunch of people putting a crystal ball in for the same guy, he's already committed, and now they're all just catching up and making it look like they know what they're doing. That's the reality of it. So, yeah, I laugh when people put up their expert predictions and then 2 days later the kid commits. Yeah, you already knew that. Like, he committed 3 days ago and he's waiting on the graphic to get made. This isn't something special, bro. You were told that by somebody. Like, this isn't you getting a read on, like, a crystal ball is like, I'm able to look into the future and evaluate this. That's not the same as like, hey man, this is going to happen. Okay, cool. My crystal ball. That's what the fake 900 numbers are for, right? Like, okay, it's fraud. You're a fraud. And it really bothers me that they do that. But if you're a fan and you want to know where a kid's going and 8 people put a prediction for a certain school in a 20, 30 minute window, then yeah, they've all found out the kid committed. And they can't wait 2 days to let it be known. I knew within like an hour of him committing that he had committed. I didn't do anything. I didn't put anything up. I didn't even put a dancing gift for him because it was going to be too obvious because everybody else was doing this stuff. But that's who they are. And that's what the business sells. And until, I mean, the only people who can stop it are the players. You know what I mean? Just stop talking to coaches, stop talking to people. And some kids don't mind it, but a lot of kids, it bothers them that their moment gets taken. And they say, like, this conversation happened with a kid that committed to Notre Dame in this class. He said, hey, I want to keep this quiet until I announce. So the first thing that the coach asked him was, have you told any of the other schools? Yes. He goes, then it ain't, you're not going to, then it's going to get out before you announce. Because we can only control our side. So a lot of people think, well, why would Notre Dame do that? Notre Dame didn't do that. But the kid respectfully went and told the other coaches that he wasn't going to pick them. And they went and told everybody else. So that's just the way the process works. And I think it's gross. And I think if you're doing that, it's a douchey move. I'm sorry. And people don't like it. I don't care. I'm an independent site. I can say whatever I want. I don't work for them and I don't want to work for them. And I think that's a gross system, but
yeah, it is. I mean, even when I was a fan, and maybe call me old school, or maybe this is just kind of like the sales mindset in me kicking in. I don't know. And it's great. I love when Notre Dame lands commitments. But like, yeah. I don't care about crystal balls. I don't. Like, it's just, this is such a long process that until you get signed on the dotted line, maybe that was something that was just ingrained to me for how many times a company or a person will be like, yeah, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're my guy. We'll use you for staffing, no doubt. Okay, then sign on the dotted line. All right, well, maybe.
Yeah.
It's like, see, like that's maybe I just have too much of that in me.
Yeah.
But like I think commitments are exciting, and I'm happy for the kid. I'm with
Yeah.
you. Don't think their moment
We're
should be
excited
stolen.
about both of these kids committing
Yeah.
to Notre Dame, big time.
Yeah, absolutely. But like when people like crystal balling, it's like I don't care.
Yeah.
Like that's cool, I guess.
So what we do at Irish Breakdown is we do the dancing GIF, right? So I'll put 2 GIFs up. It's one of Carlton dancing, doing the thing he does, and then one of Tupac dancing. And people say, why do you do that? I said, well, one is what I think I look like when I dance, and the other one is what I actually look like when I dance. You know what I mean? So like in my head, I'm Tupac, In my head, I'm more, in reality, I'm more Carlton. You know what I mean? But when I do those, what's funny is people would they would guess who it was. And I said, stop guessing, just enjoy the moment. And what's funny is when they guess, they never guess right, because what I don't do is put a dancing GIF up for some kid who just visited that everybody's putting crystal balls for. Like mine are more like, I know something you don't know. And, I've got a little bit of that in me of like, I want people to know that I knew something, but we've decided like, we're going to do it in this fun way where nobody actually knows who it is. Because what's funny is in all the dancing GIFs I've done this cycle, not once has anybody guessed publicly or privately. Because I have friends of mine say, hey, is it so-and-so? Is it so-and-so? And they never get it right. Because I don't do the obvious ones where it's like, okay, like when Jackson Coleman, like, committed and all this, I could have done something where it's like, hey, hey, here's where we're at. And, and then it's obvious and it's lame. And that's why one of the dancing GIFs was not for Jackson Coleman, because I think that's lame. And so that's why when kids commit, people are like, this is the one, right? And I'm like, nope, it's not the one, because I did something that's a little bit, and when I do say who it is, you guys are like, wait a minute, you knew then? I'm like, yes, I knew then. So that's going to be kind of the way that we do it, but we do it in a way where I'm not taking a kid's moment, because you honestly don't really know who it is. I mean, like Trev, when I tell you, because you and Sean Davis are the only people that know who the dancing GIFs are. And each time you guys are like, seriously, that's who it's for? Every time. Am I wrong? Because it's not the common sentiment of who they are. So I understand the need, I understand why they do it. And I'm not actually opposed entirely to the crystal ball prediction process. What I don't like is the way they do it. You shouldn't be able to do it if you don't have anything to do with that kid's recruitment, because you're just doing it because Steve Wiltfong did it. So I'm going to do it because Steve Wiltfong did it. And I'm not bashing Steve here. Here's the other thing too. They have to do it. That's part of Steve's job by his bosses, is to do those things. It's not his decision. He's doing his job. But I don't like the process. But so some guy that covers Rutgers is going to make a crystal ball prediction for a kid who's not being recruited by freaking Rutgers. So you can say, I got 95%. You should be able to do it once. No changes. One time. You can do a crystal ball one time and you can never change it. Do that and they start meaning something, because now people just kind of tune it out. Now it's just something I can do a clickbait article about. Hey, I'm trending so-and-so, knowing that in a month you're going to write another one about another school. I've seen so many freaking articles about Marcus Fakatu and David Folaranchu about where they're trending that it makes you want to barf, because I'm like, that's not even close to being accurate. You're just using this to be able to get a clickbait article out, and people start freaking out. Like, there are Notre Dame fans that actually thought David Folaranchu was going to go to Texas Tech. Why? Because they wrote articles about it. He was not going to Texas Tech. That's just the reality of it. You get to do it once. If you do that, then I'll respect it. You're going to make one prediction, and if you make your prediction with a week of him committing, it doesn't count. That's what I would do. That's when it would mean something to me. They'll never do that, because then think of all the articles they would miss out on writing if they did it that way. And that's why they won't do it, because at the end of the day, it's all about clickbait. That's all it's about. People will say, I got a 90%. Yeah, you made 5 different predictions for the kid. You were bound to get it right. So, of course, you have a 90-something. How do you not have 100% the success rate? Like, how is that not a thing? So, I can't tell you the last time a kid committed somewhere and I didn't know where he was going to commit. And it's not because I don't even cover recruiting the way that they do. That's just how the process works. So, whatever. All right. Let's get to a few more here. We got a super chat here from Jari Z Bear. Says, no statement, just showing support. I appreciate that very, very much. We're getting close to the end of this. I want to get to for sure get to some people that we haven't had questions from yet. I don't know that I answered this question. If you have to know where a kid's going to commit, there's value in looking at the crystal balls. I would ignore them because I think they're scummy. But when you see 8 people make a crystal ball for a kid, pretty good odds that he's committed to that school. All right, we got one from Camden Hirschberger.
With you guys mentioning that Notre Dame may take a smaller wide receiver class in 2027 and potentially a larger one in 2028, who do you think are some potentially good fits at wide receiver in 2028?
So it's I don't know that it's going to be a huge class. I think they're trying to right the ship where it's like 3-ish a year in high school, and then you know anytime you have a supplement, instead of bringing in a 5-man class like they did last year, just supplement in the portal. I think they had to do the 5-man class last year because they just needed to get a healthy roster of not just numbers, but then skill sets that they were just lacking. But when I look at the 2028 class, it's a little bit early, but just a couple guys to keep an eye on. There's a local kid, Marshawn Thornton from Chicago. He's a teammate of Quentin Burrell to keep an eye on. He's a talented player that's visited him multiple times. Maddox Wheel is a kid from Indiana to keep an eye on. I don't know they're necessarily making a hard push for him yet, but he's definitely a guy that's on the board. Owen Johnson from Pennsylvania is a high school teammate of Joey O'Brien's, an early name to know. Lorenzo McMullen's a really talented kid from Ohio that visited in the spring. They did a really nice job with there. I know Maddox Davis is a kid they're trying to get on campus. They just had Jalen Adai on campus from Texas. I don't think they're in a great place there right now, but it was good to get him on the board, and then now you can kind of build on it. But so there's a lot of guys on the board that they're on. Dedrick Kimbrough, I think they tried to get to visit. Jeremy Laster just visited this spring. So there's a lot of those kids that have been on campus. They're still trying to sort out who they're going to get, who they want. Trey Finney visited. They offered him. DeAndre Bidden recently visited. So the board's pretty large right now. There's a lot of good fits. It's just going to start getting sorted out over the next 6 months. I think you're going to start to see in the fall it whittle down a little bit to maybe like 10, 12 guys, and then even more so as they get into next winter. So, but that's one of the positions, Trevor. They have a lot of offers out to receivers, more than any other position other than maybe defensive line, and corners close. But yeah, it's a pretty big board. It's a pretty big board.
Another one from Camden Hirschberg.
That's the same one. He put it up twice. Sorry.
From Tom Connor, I find it amazing that a team, Notre Dame, who didn't make the playoffs recruit this well. Can you explain why?
Well, number one, because kids haven't completely forgotten about the fact that they played for the title the year before. I think that's part of it. And the other thing, Tom, is, and Trevor and I were having this conversation, recruits don't react as emotionally and reactionary to things as fans do. So that's why Indiana doesn't have like the number one recruiting class in the country right now. Because it's like, yeah, they had a great year, but they're just not as emotional about it as we are as fans. So every time Trevor's bringing up the point, like every time Notre Dame loses a game, it's like, what's this going to do to impact the class? Nothing, because they're not at home losing their minds. They're, oh, that sucks, Notre Dame lost. Turn the TV off and go out and play some hoops or something like that. Like, they don't have the emotional, my years ruined by a loss that we have as fans, because they're not fans. They're future players and things like that, but they don't have the 20-year like buy-in that a lot of us have, and for some of us a lot more than 20 years because we're older. But it's just for a lot, and these kids are more and more savvy than they used to be. Look, Notre Dame is still a hot program. No, they didn't make the playoff, and in some ways them not making the playoff was good for them, because from a recruiting standpoint, because what did we hear after Notre Dame got left out? Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, all these big names in college football talking about how good Notre Dame was and how bad they got screwed over. They were the talk of the playoff for the first few days afterwards, not the teams that were in it. So you hear all this. Oh, they got screwed. They got left out. They got this. They got that. That's great PR for Notre Dame in some regard. And kids didn't care that they chose not to play in the stupid Pop-Tarts Bowl. A Pop-Tarts Bowl that 5 stars know they'll never play in. You know what I mean? In their careers.
I mean, shoot, even in the first round of the playoffs, Notre Dame was still being brought up.
Oh,
like that Miami
constantly.
Texas A&M game that was 10-3. They're like, Notre Dame could have played better than this. When Alabama got the absolute
and both of those teams
doors,
beat Notre Dame. That
I
was
know.
the crazy thing.
I know. When Alabama got the doors blown off of them, even some Indiana fans were like, look, man, I don't know if Notre Dame would have beat us. They would have played us more competitively than that.
Right.
I mean, that's what it was. Notre Dame was the talk of the playoffs, and they weren't even in it. 100%.
Yep. Black Irish 864. Chris, thank you very, very much for that super chat, man. I appreciate you. Very, very much appreciate you. See if we got got a couple more recruiting questions we'll get to before we wrap this up. We got to that one. Let's see here. I'm trying to just get a couple of these here real quick. Here, this is a decent one.
Losing out on Coleman, will Oregon redouble its efforts to land Julius Jones, if for no other reason than payback?
It won't be because of payback, because, again, coaches and recruits don't look at these things the way fans do. They're trying to build a receiving core. And losing Jackson Coleman is not going to have any impact on whether or not they're pushing harder for Julius Jones Jr. Just like if Notre Dame would have lost a player, it's not going to change how if he would have picked, let's say he would have shocked both Oregon and Notre Dame and picked Northwestern or Stanford. That just, man, now we need to turn it up even harder for Julius Jones Jr. No, Julius Jones Jr. is the guy for Notre Dame. And I would imagine he's the guy or one of the guys for Oregon. I can't say for sure he's the guy at Oregon because I don't know their board, but let's just say he is. He's the number one target. Losing Jackson Coleman is not all of a sudden going to say, let's ramp it up, because it's like, if you hadn't already ramped it up, then that's a problem. There should be no ramp up available with Julius Jones Jr. for both of those programs. So I don't think it's going to have anything to do with it. I think what it does is it puts more pressure on them that they've got to close on some guys on the board. There's no doubt about that, but I don't think it changes their efforts. I think they're already ramping up their and then here we go. We got this question from Meredith Hawk. Titus Hawk spends his winter season starting on the basketball team too. I actually did know that and forgot to mention it. So I said he goes into winter ball. You are correct, obviously, that basketball, but I forgot about that. And that's why I said, I didn't say this on the show, but that's why I told a buddy of mine, when I look at Titus Hawk, he reminds me a lot of Kyle Rudolph. Because when I saw Kyle Rudolph in person at the Army All-American game as a senior in high school, he was skinny. He had like broad shoulders and big hands and big feet, but he was like 210, 215 pounds. By his sophomore year, he was 250 because he stopped playing basketball in the offseason. So, yes, thank you for the heads up on that. We appreciate that reminder. He also does play basketball, and he's a pretty good basketball player as well, as you could imagine.
I believe it. Godspeed to any kid that gets in his way in the paint.
Well, a lot of their best tight ends recently have been really good basketball players. Ian Premer is a really good basketball player. Eli Raridan scored like 20 points a game in Iowa coming out of high school. So a lot of those kids have been really good basketball players as well. It's just the nature of 6'5", 6'6", really athletic type of players. Kyle Rudolph was a great basketball player as well. He was an all-state basketball player. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But let's get a couple more before we get out of here. Here's one. So were either of these commitments dancing? Yes, Titus Hawk was. He was the only one that's committed so far that was one of my dancing gifts. Because when I found out he was going to commit, I didn't know it was going to happen this quickly. And so that's why. And I was pretty fired up about that one. So that's why we did a dancing gift for that one. Let's see here. And if you ask us if their kid's going to commit to Notre Dame, we're not going to answer that one. So Trev, let's do I think we actually are good on questions. Let me see here. Yeah, I think we're good. I think that kind of nails them all. Let me see if any of others came in. So just real quick, Nicholas Grosh, we kind of answered the question, who are the best two guys left on the board and why? I think we kind of dove into that a little bit earlier. I don't know that you can narrow it down to two, so I don't want to answer just two. Because if I said, let's just say hypothetically that I went with the two guys that on three ranks the highest. So that'd be Abraham Cisse it'd be David Ferlarencio and Albert Simeon, who are like 9 and 10 in their ranking. Well, then I'm leaving out number 12, Abraham Cisse. I'm leaving out Julius Jones Jr. I'm leaving out. So and if they only landed those two best players and nothing else, this is a disappointing class. So to have a number one class, it's more than just the top two guys. I think you could argue that the two biggest needs left on the board are Julius Jones Jr. and pick one of the stud defensive linemen. I think are the two biggest needs that they have. Is you've got to finish with them based on, class needs, stacking classes, whatever the case may be. But pick one of the defensive linemen, whatever. But here's the thing: even if you got that guy and you don't get the others, it's not the kind of D-line class that you need. And that's what I love about football recruiting compared to basketball recruiting, where your entire class could be made by getting one guy in basketball. In football, you could get the best player in the country and not a lot else around him. And guess what? You're not excited about that recruiting class because, you got the number one quarterback, but you signed a bunch of mediocre, slow-footed, undersized offensive linemen. So that kid's going to spend his entire career running for his life. Exhibit A, Michael Vick, who went to a great program out of high school, but wasn't nearly the high school player that Ronald Curry was. And Ronald Curry, who went to a terrible football program for basketball because he wanted to play basketball. And that Ronald Curry was a way better player than Michael Vick in high school. And I know that because I watched them both play. They're from my area. They were a year behind me. Way different. And if they would have gone to different schools, nobody'd know who Michael Vick was. And we'd all be talking about, remember how good Ronald Curry was as the number one overall draft pick? I'm just telling you, that's how I believe it would be. So you got to surround yourself with other dogs. And football, big-time football players know that. You can be the best receiver in the country, but you better go somewhere that they got a guy that can throw the flip of football. You know what I mean? Otherwise, guess what? You're not going to produce as much. And, that's kind of how I look at it. So I can't give you just two. I'm going to tell you who I think the best guys are as a group, and we did that in the end of the Titus Hawk breakdown. So that's where I'm at.
Well, good deal. Well, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, some more IB content coming your way. IB Nation Sports Beat goes live tonight at 5:05. They're also going to be talking about the Titus Hawk commitment. I wondered if you were going to be on.
I'll be on at 5:05. I'll be on at the beginning to talk about it and just kind of wrap up what we talked about here.
Right on. We'll be sure to tune in tomorrow or tonight to that show. And then Brian and I will be back tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the defensive end room, keeping up with that.
For now.
For now, the defensive end room we will be talking about, but who knows? We're at the point in the offseason where stuff is subject to change. All the more reason to have that notification bell hit, to be subscribed to this channel. Also, more the reason to be a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com. It's the best way to stay in the now. A lot of the recruiting questions that we get asked a lot in shows get answered on the premium message boards. Plus, you'll get to see dancing gifs, and you can see the two versions of Brian dancing, whether he thinks he's Tupac or Carlton, Alfonso Rivera. So always fun to tune into.
It's actually a better dancer than Tupac in reality.
Yes.
But it's more of the specific Carlton dance that is more of like where I'm at. So,
well, there you go. You can find all that stuff, premium message boards, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Be sure to hit the like on your way out of this show. Brian and I will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. So until then, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.